Oh, good? Okay. I'm going to call to order the Regional Planning Governing Board February 13th meeting with a roll call, please.
Donald Abbott.
Here.
Oscar Delgado for Naomi Dewar.
Here.
Jenny Breckes. Devin Reese.
Here.
Bonnie Weber.
Here.
Charlene Bybee.
Here.
Ed Lawson. Here. Marsha Burke-Bigler.
Here.
Vaughn Hartung. Here. Jean Herman.
Here.
And non-voting member Katie Simon Holland.
And if we can have a Pledge of Allegiance, and if we can have Councilman Delgado lead us in this one.
Thank you, Chairman. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And then if we could remain standing, just have a moment of silence for Mayor Bob Cushell. It's a sad passing of the day, so please bow your heads. Thank you. We're going to move on to approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Motion by Burke-Bigler, or Commissioner Burke-Bigler, second by Devin, right? Missouri, sorry. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll move on to approval of the minutes for the December 12th RPGB meeting. Motion to approve. Anyone?
So moved.
Who's that? Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Hartung. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll move on to public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Yes, I have a few. First up is Russ Earl, and after that is Lindsay Lai.
President of Silver Knolls Community Organization. First off, thank you for having us all here today. This project, as we see it as a community, is the poster child for sprawl development. It's far out, it's 15 miles from downtown Reno. It's fairly high density in comparison to what is currently allowed in the area, which is 1 home per acre. Let us also say that we are not anti-development in any means. We worked with the developer here for many years with their currently approved plan for 680 homes. And we have also spoken to them and stated that we would not be opposed to them going to 780 homes on their 780 acres. You're also going to hear today from the developer that they need to create jobs, and that's why you'll see the people in their color-coordinated t-shirts behind me over here. Well, their current rate of production out in Cold Springs is approximately 63 homes per year. At least that's what I was told by Commissioner Hartung the other day when I spoke to him. Excuse me, I thought you said 63? No. Either way, if it's in that, he told us he was going to build 75 homes per year when we had our negotiations. That would give approximately 10 years of jobs with no problem. He is also part owner in the Evans Ranch development. Well, that is almost 5,700 homes, and he would surely keep his workers working for 20 to 30 years more after this development if they were to keep with our current zoning. Other problems we have with this, why this is the poster child for sprawl development, is infrastructure. They say they're going to do this, they say they're going to do that, and they said it needed to pencil out. Well, they said that they're going to, last meeting, they said they'd pay for all of Red Rock Road, even though their development fees or impact fees would only be $7.8 million. That leaves $43 million in the hole. The other thing, they said that, oh, we'll build a sewer treatment plant. So they have volunteered probably to spend in the neighborhood of $100 million. That would be approximately $55,000 per home, and at $290,000 to $310,000 per home, that really leaves no profit margin. So I can't see them doing all this out of the goodness of their heart. So that's why we're a little skeptical about that. We ask you to please look at what planning agencies 4 times, the Planning Commission initially when they looked at this, the Washoe County Planning Department, and this body, the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning, twice voted this in non-compliant per findings. We would ask that you again look at this. They promise a lot of things, but we don't see that they're actually going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, I have Lindsay Lai, and then after that is Gordon Gossage.
Hello. Can you hear me? Hello, my name is Lindsay Lai, and I am in support of creating more affordable housing and an increase in density. According to EDON's EPIC report, over the next 5 years, the population in this area will grow by more than 54,500 people. EDON estimates that around 22,600 new households will need to be developed to house this population increase. In short, our county will need to add approximately 4,500 homes per year to keep up with this population growth. Millennials now represent 37% of home buyers today in the market. Unfortunately, the average student graduates with $37,000 worth of debt. I know I spent well over $25,000 on my master's degree from UNR. With so much student debt, millennials won't be able to purchase 1-acre lot properties with $500,000 price tags on them. In the last decade, Washoe County averaged about 1,300 single-family home permits per year, which is much less than the 36-year average of 2,500 homes. Please take note that both of these numbers are drastically lower than the 4,500 new homes that need to be built per year to keep up with our population growth. Millennials aren't the only ones looking for smaller homes. Baby boomers are retiring at a rate of almost 10,000 people per day across the country. Many baby boomers, now empty nesters, are looking to downsize. Both retiring baby boomers and millennials are looking for affordable, low-maintenance homes. In my lifetime, the world's population will double from 5 billion to almost 10 billion in 2050, which is just 30 years away. According to the UN, 55% of the population lives in a city today. In just 30 years, that number will grow to almost 70%. We cannot deny the population growth numbers, and the numbers say that we have to build homes to house our friends, families, and your constituents. Please support affordable housing developments like the Silver Hills Project that increase density and provide a larger variety of home types in your area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Gordon Gossage, and after that is Sean Whistler.
Hello. For the record, my name is Gordon Gossage. We are in a housing emergency. We're in a housing emergency. Maybe some of you have entered this extremely important meeting knowing you would vote not to approve Silver Hills. If so, I really urge you to change your vote. I understand some of you have the best interests in mind of our neighbors in the North Valleys. Please consider if your decision will benefit all of your constituents or just a portion of them. All across the country, we're creating two societies, separate and unequal. Households who make $100,000 or more and people who make less. People with 4-year college degrees and people who don't have them. Those of us born before 1982 and our children born afterwards. Workers in growing industries and those working in declining industries. And residents of California and the Northeast as opposed to the rest of the United States, separate and unequal. However, in Greater Reno, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Rather than fighting each other, if we cooperate as a community, we can avoid creating two societies beginning now in 2020. We can end our housing emergency. We can end our housing emergency before the mid-20s. To do this, we need to increase the housing of all types, for all incomes, in all neighborhoods. The listeners are asking you for final approval for a neighborhood affordable for the working class. The buyers and the renters who can pay for a home in Silver Hills can no longer afford a home in Midtown. They can't afford a home in South Reno, and soon nowhere within the McCarran Ring. Bob and now Peter are from our community. Quietly, they've helped so many people, including our most vulnerable neighbors. Monica's 10-unit project almost didn't happen until the listeners stepped in to build the 10 houses at an all-in cost of $50,000. Who else would have done that? Approving Silver Hills will help all of our neighbors, including the children of the current residents of the North Valleys. All of us must cooperate together to increase our housing supply, to stabilize our rents, and stabilize our home prices for everyone in Greater Reno. Please, please make your vote benefit for all of our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last card I have for this item is Sean Whistler.
Good afternoon. Previously, just a few months ago, I was the principal out at Nancy Gomes Elementary School in Cold Springs for the past 4 years, where I had a great opportunity to work with Lifestyle Homes and Mr. Listener. I'd actually met Mr. Listener in my own classroom, probably 10, 12 years ago as a teacher at Rita Cannon, where this guy's coming through and setting up computers and helping us out, and honestly, I didn't have a clue who the guy was. Just somebody really nice in the community coming and doing that. Then run into the guy a few years later at Anderson Elementary School, doing the same thing, and then teaching a class over at Vaughn Middle School. And then when I finally had the opportunity to actually get to know him and his family and what they're looking to do out in the Cold Springs area, I was really impressed. You know, if you haven't been out there, the Cold Springs community and the homes they built and the community out there they've built, they have a lot of really proud people that live out there. They built a community that has a lot of green spaces. They have walking paths. They're always thinking about what is their community supposed to look like. They fix the problems that are out there. They go and they help their residents. One of the most telling things about something around those lines is when I was in the office one day meeting with Peter, and a gal calls and says she's got a water pipe broken in her laundry room. And he's thinking, man, I built that house 10 years ago. Didn't hesitate to call and get somebody over there to fix it right then. It's not under warranty. My builder wouldn't have done that. I live out in Spanish Springs. My builder's gone. So when you look at those kind of things and you look at the individuals that you have before you that are looking to propose this project and knowing what they've done and knowing the ability to bring home ownership to individuals and make another proud community of people, you have the right people in front of you for that. Over the years, even out at Nancy Gomes, the amount of time, energy, and effort that was put into that school and other North Valley schools around early childhood education and understanding the importance that not only is he just there building homes and building that community, it's really part of the community. The schools are a part of that. And really kind of it's also thinking outside the box a lot of times of how are we going to make sure these kids are college and career ready. It starts in those early ages. And a lot of folks don't know that Lifestyle Homes and Mr. Listener funded millions of dollars worth of kindergarten aids across the school district, not just the places where he's building homes. It really has impacted. I'll bet you could go in any school right now and find a computer he's donated or fixed or something along those lines just over the years as those things have been moved around. But I really think it's important for y'all to know that, how proud I was to be there and understand and know that I had him and that family out there building those homes, building that community. And I saw that in my families. I saw that in my kids and that were at that school, the students, sorry, my kids. And I really think it's important for y'all to know that. And so like I was saying, I'm just, if you're gonna have people building homes, which we know we need, do you want the national builder who's going to come in and possibly not offer you those things, or do you want someone that really has, you know, a buy-in and tie into our community? So, thank you.
Thank you.
And we do have one more. It's Robert Carano.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Corrado. I'm a resident of Woodland Village, development built by Lifestyle Homes in Cold Springs. Let's face facts. Truckee Meadows has a need for entry-level, mid-level housing. To not amend the current plan is irresponsible. It will cripple the area's ability to grow, create jobs, and the resulting economic vitality. This project meets that need. While I can appreciate the current residents' opposition, the plan as presented does allow for buffer areas and open space. I can support Lifestyle Homes based on two other, what I'm going to call infill projects. One was Highland Ranch in Sun Valley. Sun Valley has its own character And despite Highland Ranch's development, Sun Valley is still Sun Valley. Same thing with Cold Springs. Prior to Woodland Village, there were large rural lots, many with horses and other animals. There still are. Same thing with the development directly adjacent to Woodland Village. Large lots, mixture of mobile homes, conventional homes, all with a variety of lifestyles. Some do include chickens, roosters, that sort of thing. That area is also unchanged. What it amounts to is Lifestyle manages to build communities that are insular while at the same time inclusive. A large portion of that is due to the attitude that Lifestyle promotes, that being one of community. Lifestyle is a builder who is honorable. They do what they say they will do. They support the communities they build. And in regard to the stormwater situation with Silver Lake, I'd like to invite anybody to come out and look at Woodland Village stormwater system. It works. We have little or no outflow. All of our runoff stays within our series of basins where it evaporates and percolates back into the water table. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one more again, and it is Monica Dupay.
Good afternoon. My name is Monica Dupay. I'm a local youth and housing activist and advocate here in Reno, and I have a great interest in ensuring our working class youth have pathways to good paying jobs and affordable places to live as they learn and earn their way in our mainstream. After all, they are our future. Kind of piggybacking onto the young speaker earlier, we put about 4,500 units average on the market each year. With the shortage estimate at 70,000 plus housing units right now, it's going to take us 16 years just to catch up at that average, and we're doing less than that now. We need smart housing construction to ensure responsible growth. It should be a no-brainer today with Silver Hills. This is a smart housing construction. Not only does the project provide a niche of housing we desperately need, it ultimately reduces displacement and tempers home prices. We also need to work with credible builders to best ensure the promised outcomes. Historically, Lifestyle homes developments are not in response to the whims of far-flung investors, but by the needs of the local residents. They've been building communities within this community for decades. They've donated over $10 million to local charities and schools. I remember someone asking me once if I knew Bob Listener before I'd ever met him. Bob is the founder of Lifestyle Homes. It's now owned by his son, Peter. That person told me Lifestyle would go back to any house they built to make sure owners are satisfied. They're like that. They always have been like that. They care about what people living in their communities need and want. This is their home too. We know where to find them if they don't keep to their contract. And I can only imagine how difficult it is to hear your constituents threatening to pull their votes from you, or worse, advocate against you. But I implore you to instead think about what your yes vote would mean today. Lifestyle Homes is proposing a structure of community in Silver Hills that maximizes economic and social opportunities, provides quality of life amenities like access to safe neighborhoods and schools and good paying jobs. Their homes are going to be priced as low as $250,000. That means a couple making $35,000 a year can have their first family home. I can assure you that young people are watching your vote on this one, and they are voting in record numbers now. In closing, I respectfully request you stop the risk aversion tactics and lead our community today with the yes vote for Silver Hills. It's been stuck long enough in the vicious cycles of regulation and resentment. Please do not allow a few selfish people who have organized against a worthwhile and necessary endeavor like housing, basic need, not for any legitimate concern, but out of a deep-seated resentment that a perceived other may benefit from their mild inconvenience of having to see something or having closer housing. An equitable Washoe County begins with abundant, secure, affordable housing. Thank you for your consideration. Please vote yes today.
Thank you.
I have no other public comment cards for this item.
Awesome. Then we will move on to business of the day. 6A, presentation discussion, and possible adoption of jurisdictional allocations and the TMRPA budget of fiscal year 2020-2021.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Interim Director Jeremy Smith for the record. Item 6A is a discussion about the proposed TMRPA budget. So we've started this conversation as far back as October. I've been working with managers at the 3 local jurisdictions to develop this budget and to develop these jurisdictional allocations. As you guys know, the representation on this board is 4 members from the city of Reno, 3 from the city of Sparks, and 3 members from Washoe County. And that also constitutes the division of funding for the agency. And so this has actually, at the time I wrote the staff report, I hadn't heard back from all managers, but I have since then. And each manager at each jurisdiction has approved at their level my request for a 7% increase to the annual jurisdictional allocations. Interestingly, it's also a 7% decrease from what we received last year. And that is due to the fact that we're no longer asking for additional funds to support the regional plan update. So the total outlay of cash is actually less than we've been receiving for 3 years, kind of moving back down. That was just kind of a fun thing with the sevens. And so you can see the numbers there. The actual budget is in attachment 1 of the staff report. But basically, we have some additional revenue items that we receive to help augment our budget. You know, we're with the 7% increase from the jurisdictions, we're creeping to sort of complete sustainability. But right now, we still do rely on the shared work programs that we have with specifically the Regional Transportation Commission. For the next fiscal year, they've committed to $75,000. We help them with support for population forecasting, the consensus forecast, the spatial disaggregation of those numbers, so jobs and houses onto the landscape. We model that, and then we conflate that data to the transportation analysis zones that they use in their transportation demand model. And so that's been kind of the main crux of our relationship, but we do all sorts of good work together, and you know, we really rely on them and they rely on us. It's a great program. Some other miscellaneous revenue, $1,400 for the PAC intern. That's a neat program where we get an intern from UNR. They pay for 2 years of that. We pay for 1. So currently we're paying this year for our PAC intern we have. But next time, that would be funded by UNR. Further, we have a relationship with the Western Regional Water Commission. We have an interlocal agreement where they pay $5,000 annually to support our ARC server product that helps us serve maps up online. In the past, they've also given us grant funding to do work on scenario planning as well as stormwater mapping. We're looking and in discussion with Jim Smitherman, the director there, to set up something a little bit more secure, like a shared work program that we have with RTC, with the WRWC, to perpetuate those activities. And finally, you guys know about this, we've had a grant that was funded through the NDP, the Nevada Department of Environmental Protection, and to look at source water protection and watershed management and non-point source pollution. Obviously, during the regional plan update, we wanted to get that done. It went on for a long time, and so we kind of moved away from doing outside projects, but that money is still there. We've been in discussion with those folks again, and we're looking to do a portion of that work in this fiscal year and continue that through the next fiscal year to use those monies to provide, again, GIS support and a viewer for folks, planners to use to assess source water protection issues in terms of projects. In terms of our expenditures, so that's our revenue side. In orange, our expenditures, payroll has actually gone down to some degree, given we've had some transition at the agency. And so that looks pretty good. You'll see in professional services, that's way up at $316,000. That really is the result of, over the course of the last 3 years, as I mentioned, we were receiving additional funds to support the regional plan update. During the fiscal year 1920, so this current year, we've been receiving that money in the amount of $115,800 distributed amongst the 3 jurisdictions. We have not used that money because we've been trying to implement the new plan, get it done, move on with other projects that we have, and I'll show you some of that stuff in a sec here. But we plan to use that to support 2 things, our natural resources plan, that would be resultant from our work on the update, as well as the public infrastructure investment plan, where we're seeking to help coordinate all of the information that's out there in public works departments, TMWA, RTC, the school district, get it all in one spot, and use that as context for our planning decisions. So what you see is a really big number there. That's not typical, and it does represent us using those funds in fiscal year 2021. Our services and supplies, that stays pretty static. And so at the end of this, we end up with a fund balance. We started with this giant fund balance because of those funds, but we would spend that, ideally, next year. And then we would end up with about a 4% fund balance. And if you take into account additional funds that are on the order of around $27,000 that are in our payroll item to support vacation payouts, changes in health insurance costs, unexpected costs. We're actually looking at right now at the end of this proposed fiscal year budget, we would have around a 6% fund balance. So that's a pretty healthy spot to be. It's not too over the top, and it's also not too thin. Okay, so I kind of gone through this. We talked about the fact that it's 7% increase. What's neat is that I did a 5-year outlook, and it doesn't look like we're going to need to ask for any increase from jurisdictional allocations in the next fiscal year, so 21-22, with the 7%. I just talked about the RPU. Here is generally, you've seen this before, but generally how we're imagining we might be able to spend that money as we embark on those projects. This fiscal year, we're really looking to finish our Truckee Meadows annual report. That is, annual reporting is a function of the state statute for our agency, but we're looking to up the game and bring more data analytics, more data metrics to that conversation. So in addition to what we receive from the jurisdictions, we are going to provide information about land use change, housing unit absorption, that sort of thing, as like an online dashboard, and coalesced into an annual report every year. So that would happen this year, and then, like I said, next year we would probably be looking to some outside consultant help as we embark on looking at, for especially public infrastructure investment plans, I mean CIPs, that sort of thing. We could use some outside engineering help, I think, in just negotiating those documents. Okay, so these arrows kind of double down on what we're just talking about. The very top, the gray, is a calendar, if you will. Today is February, and we're shooting out there to the beginning of fiscal year 2021, which would start July 1. We kind of have these 3 tracks that we're on kind of simultaneously. Number 1 is our regulatory function. So since we got the regional plan adopted in October of last year, there is a review that is necessary for all 3 of the local jurisdiction plans and all of the affected entity facility plans. That's a 180-day conformance review period. We're doing that right now, and we anticipate we should be completed with that by the end of May. So that we have a plan for that. And also we have regular conformance items like the Silver Hills item that we're gonna hear in a sec. It's kind of tough to read the next light blue one on the slides, but maybe you can see it better behind you. Our data analytics work is also incredibly, it's important. It's a cornerstone of what we've tried to build at TMRPA over the past decade. The consensus forecast, every 2 years, we look at 4 independent sources of population and job growth, bring those together to get an ever-changing look at how the future is going to unfold here. We use that then to, as I mentioned, feed into our population modeling and our job modeling on the landscape to support planning for the RTC, for the WRWC, for TUMWA, for the school district, really for anyone that's an affected entity of our plan. So that work is happening, and the 2050 RTP is anticipating that they will be able to do model runs with that data in May of this year. And so that is that first light blue arrow. That's something we need to get accomplished ASAP, right? And then also underneath that is the work towards the annual report, which we should finish before the end of the fiscal year and then present as well. So that's kind of our data work along with the stuff I mentioned from NDP. And then finally, you can see starting right off the bat in the next fiscal year, we'll move on to those 2 big projects that came out of the update. Okay, and so I mentioned briefly that we have these shared work programs. It does look like, and I'm in discussion with both RTC and WRWC about the amounts of those shared work programs, and it does look like RTC will be willing to support going to $100,000 a year, which would really help us. And the number that the WRWC and I have been sort of working with is a $40,000 number. We're going to have to identify scope of work for that and make sure it's appropriate, but that seems to be where we're going. And so this is probably illegible up there, but you'll have this in front of you because I made a mistake in the staff report. So I've provided a corrected version at your spot, and also those are available, and we'll make sure that this gets put online. Basically, the mistake I made was in the second line of the first part, I didn't, or the third line rather, I didn't hold constant the allocations from the jurisdictions. So we asked for 7%, the manager said yes. I said, we're not going to have to ask again for 2 years. And so I messed up the math. So this is the corrected one. But after that 2 years, I anticipated a 2.5% increase, which is pretty gradual increase to kind of work us up. And I also anticipated the increases to the shared work programs to continue to build up our revenue and make the agency more sustainable, as you guys kind of intended. In terms of expenditures, I raised the payroll year over year as well at 2.5% and increased professional services and supplies by 1%. And then finally, if you look at the bottom, the fund balance section, it's just showing that if we can achieve that, we can start to build a fund balance. Now, I don't suggest that we need to have a 17% fund balance. That's just the way the math worked out. But what it shows is that if we gradually increment the allocations, work on the shared work programs, keep our expenditures as low as we can achieve sustainability, and then we can make some decisions about staffing, and if we have that big of a fund balance, there could be different decisions we make. So it does look pretty positive as a 5-year outlook. I do want to talk a little bit about our staff situation. Since the recession, we have, everyone took a huge hit when the recession came and people were furloughed and salaries got reduced in the whole nine. And slowly over time, everything has kind of come back as economic growth in the region has proceeded. Well, we still do not have the capacity to have merit-based raises at TMRPA. We've been surviving off cost of living adjustments that are voted on annually by this board. And so what I'd like to do is reinstate that with this budget, and so that I have the capacity in the position of director to perform evaluations of the employees and to give them merit-based raises as appropriate. Now, our employee handbook in the past has contemplated 5% steps. I think we'd like to bring another item back to you probably in the June timeframe to look at, rather than a set 5% step, a salary range with a start position and an end value, and then based on the evaluation and the budget allocation and all of that, have the capacity to provide up to a 5% raise annually for an employee, but it doesn't necessarily have to be 5%. Finally, so in this budget, I'm asking for a 2.5% merit-based raise for the staff, and also a 2% cost of living adjustment, and that will affect the salary ranges. So the total raise would be 4.5%. We're still, this is again hard to read, but you do have it in the packet and it's available online. Our positions are still the lowest paid planner positions in the region in terms of planning staff, but this would help to make us a little more competitive, and the reinstatement of the merit-based approach, I think, is really gonna help with retention of employees, which we need because there's only 5 of us, and if we wanna do all of this stuff that we're trying to do, we need to have some continuity. Further, I'll go back one thing. I want to make sure that right now we're operating with a temporary full-time Regional Planner 1. I would like, depending on the vote here on this item, I'd like to move forward with go ahead and hiring a full-time Regional Planner 1. That just brings our staff to 5, and that's where we think we can operate successfully. Finally, just to kind of also in the payroll item, we have about $40,000 in there. We've been very successful using interns, and we want to continue to do that. It's great for them. They get experience. It's great for us. We get labor, right, pretty cheap. Also, in that $40,000 is the idea of hiring an administrative assistant, somebody that could come in part-time, help us file stuff, document management, help us prepare packets, that kind of thing. Right now, we're all hands on deck. We just do everything we can together the best we can, but it would really be helpful to have that person. I mentioned there's a little bit of money in the payroll item as well to support unforeseen changes to insurance rates and payouts. I mean, we just had that. We went through several $1,000s of vacation payouts, for employees that transition. So that's important to have. And then we would still have around $37,000 in our fund balance just to kind of deal with whatever might come along, which is an important component of having a balanced budget. So with that, the recommendation is that you guys discuss the proposed budget, ask me any questions, and then there's a proposed motion ahead. Thank you very much for your time.
Any discussion on this item?
Yeah, I have a little discussion. It was at great issue when we contemplated adopting the regional plan that was adopted ultimately, were these 2 items, the natural resources plan and the public infrastructure plan. And now you're implementing and plugging in consultant, resources to it. And you show a time frame, which I presume on that calendar was progressive, not finished in those.
Correct, it is
Yeah,
progressive,
okay.
yes.
Do you think at the next meeting, and I have been asking this, and I'm gonna actually bring it up as we deliberate this controversial item, because I think sometimes it's good to understand what information we're trying to get. Because obviously, we're doing plans to create some policy and answer some questions. And do you think at the next meeting, you can come back with a concise but very well-designed outline of what these plans are and what we're going to sign up for? Because I felt it was rather vague and smushy and potentially mission creepage into other agencies, and just want to really understand what your thinking is, because you've assigned a dollar item to it, so that would translate to you have a concept. And I just want to make sure that we all understand we're all on the same page of what we're trying to get as our first implementation of the regional plan. So we meet when next?
April 9th is the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay. Do you think you could come up, we could have that as an item?
Yeah, I think I can bring more specificity, absolutely. I think we knew coming out of the regional plan update, as we talked about these items, there were things we were lacking that we wished we had to provide the context for our decision-making. We knew it was going to be taking us some time to get to it, because again, we are only 5, and we do have those mandated things we have to do to finish out this year. But absolutely, I can bring some more specificity, and I would just say now that the idea is not to really go in and tell people, like at Tumwa or the school district, here's what we want you to do. What we really want to do is make sure that we are coalescing all of the different planning work that's going on and having it centralized so that we can look at it together in one spot as we make a decision, and have that really for this body and the RPC and any entity that wants that information. If we put a project in a certain specific spot, it should be pretty simple to know what we're planning for in terms of facilities, and yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah, Ms. Spivey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question on payroll, and you showed all the different positions.
Yes.
But I don't see anything regarding, you're the interim executive director right now. I don't see any item on what expenditures should we go with a permanent executive director, and I don't see the executive director listed somewhere in the payroll, and I know the payroll is our biggest expense. Could you address that?
Absolutely, yes. So the current salary as contracted with the interim director is $125,000 annually. Traditionally, that's been an annual to 18-month contract with either an interim or the executive director. It kind of sits a little bit outside of the regular payroll schedule, if you will. The merit-based raises or any raises that would occur would be subject to the evaluation that this board does for that person. In terms of the interim director contract that I have, there is a potential liability in there if, when we do begin the process to hire a permanent executive director, if it happens during the time period of my contract and I'm not selected, for instance, if I don't apply or if I'm not selected, then I would revert back to the GIS coordinator position, which I was in previously. And so that would cause us to come back to this body and ask for an augment to this budget to then fund both of those positions.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, in our total number under the budget column, it's not in the page with all the steps.
Correct.
But it is included in the total
Absolutely, yes.
budget. It's incorporated in that already.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Reese.
Chair, we'll see if I can operate this. I appreciate Mr. Smith, the presentation. I have, I guess, 2 general questions, and then I'm prepared to make a motion. The first is, it seems that whether we like it or not, we have a generation of folks who are retiring. We're all dealing with that in all of our agencies, and there seems to be some critical massing of brain drain. And so in that regard, I think our budget is light on people. Meaning there are, I know you sort of jokingly said there are 5 of you, but you're acting in an interim capacity, and I hope we'll address that at some point in time in the near future. but we have to be able to pay people what they're worth, and to keep them and to keep continuity, that has to happen. And the amount that we're contributing, each of us as the various agencies, I don't think is keeping pace with that. And so long-term, I'm concerned that we're setting ourselves up to be, the revolving door or the training ground for other agencies, because planners are a specialized group of folks with an incredible depth of knowledge, and I worry that the recommendations have not really gone far enough to protect our most valuable resource, which is our people. So that's sort of the general statement I want to make about it. The second thing is that I do think that there are things that we have to work out within our own agencies in order to adequately fund that. And the task of each of us then is to go back and provide for that opportunity. And so that's what I'll be looking to do, especially perhaps it won't be in this budget cycle, but it will be as we move forward with the knowledge that we gain through this process, because I continue to have to learn entirely what our role is and what we're doing in this body. And so I appreciate the work that you've done. And then I suppose the last thing I'll just say is I thank you and the staff for putting this together. It is comprehensive, and so I'm prepared to move to adopt the proposed budget for the fiscal year as presented by the staff report.
Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Burpigler. Any other discussion on this item? I'll just chime in real quick. I think I say every time, good work. It's awesome we had this before our budget meeting, our budget workshops. So I'm glad we got that done. So good work, definitely, Chairman Smith. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh. Probably should do that. Let me open that up for public comment, rewind that. Do we have any public comment on?
Apologies. I do not have any for this item.
Okay, good. Let's revote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll move on to 6B. Public hearing on Washoe County Master Plan Amendment, Silver Hill CR 19-009. Consideration of appeal pursuant to NRS 278.02826 and Section 4.11 of the RPGB Regulations on Procedure of the Regional Planning Commission's RPC. Determination of nonconformance for proposed master plan amendment. The subject property is located on both the east and west sides of Red Rock Road, north of its intersection with Silver Knolls Boulevard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're going to hear from Policy Analyst Nate Kusha on this item, followed by the Washoe County, the applicant's interested party. But before we do that, I'd like to turn it over to our legal counsel, Norma Azevedo, to address the voting parameters for this item for the body today.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for the record, Norma Azevedo. This matter before you is an appeal, which is a little bit different than you typically address. And so the voting requirements are by statute specific. NRS 278.0282 requires 6 votes for this body to take action. There are 10 members, so it's a majority of the total membership. And if this body, for whatever reason, after consideration and deliberation of the appeal, cannot reach a consensus vote of 6 members, then the action of the RPC that's under appeal will be held in status. It'll be affirmed by no action. So any questions, I'm more than glad to answer them.
I don't see any.
Thanks very much. All right, Nate Kusha.
Thank you, member of the board. Good afternoon, Nate Kusha, TMRPA for the record. So the case before you, as you heard, is consideration of an appeal of the Regional Planning Commission's determination of nonconformance for a proposed master plan amendment, CR 19-009, Silver Hills. So as Director Smith pointed out, I'm going to give a short presentation that kind of gives you an overview of the proposal and a history of the total review thus far of the proposed amendment. We're going to hear from the applicant's representative, and they're going to do a presentation. We'll bring it back to you guys for a discussion and your decision. So the amendment site is located within the North Valleys Area Plan on the east and west sides of Red Rock Road, north of Silver Knolls. As you can see on the slide overhead, the proposed amendment to the Washoe County Master Plan includes the removal of 4 parcels totaling roughly 780.32 acres from the Silver Knolls Suburban Character Management Area and the creation of the Silver Hills Suburban Character Management Area and transferring those 780.32 acres to the new character management area. So as you can see on the slide overhead, there's that island of yellow that encompasses the subject property. That currently is the Silver Knolls Suburban Character Management Area. If this amendment were to pass, then the subject property there would be removed from it and would be a new Suburban Character Management Area, the Silver Hills Suburban Character Management Area. Here's quickly overhead is an aerial imagery of the site, just to help give you some more context. So to help visualize the project, overhead is the land use plan, as well as the proposed acreages from the Silver Hills Specific Plan Development Standards. Currently, the Silver Hills project is entitled for 680 units. This amendment seeks to increase that allowance by 1,192 units, resulting in a total of 1,872 units altogether. Policy 4.1.3 of the regional plan identifies 6 factors that must be considered related to master plan conformance review, which are listed on this slide. We're going to briefly walk through each of these different findings in the next slides. So for regional form, it is located near the edge of the TMSA, however closer than nearby approved developments. It is adjacent to existing residential development, and it is currently master planned for residential development. For development constraints, there are slopes from 15 to 30% on site, as well as over 30%, which is considered development constraints area per policy 2.2.1 of the 2012 regional plan. These DCA areas are not proposed to be developed, and majority of the open space identified in the subject site is spatially coincident with these sloped areas. The applicant has transferred density from these sloped areas to more developable areas of the site. For infill housing and jobs housing balance, due to the distance from the region's core, the site is not considered infill. However, it is in proximity to the Reno-Stead industrial area and airport and adjacent to existing residential development. In addition, there's roughly 4 acres of commercial uses contemplated as part of the project, and the increased dwelling unit density may result in more affordable units. For public services and infrastructure, the project is slated to sewer to the Reno-Stead Water Reclamation Facility, which has planned upgrades to the treatment capacity from 2 million gallons per daily to 4 million gallons per day by 2023. However, while there are proposed options, the effluent disposal method for that capacity is unclear at this time. The water will be served by TOMWA, and the Silver Hills Specific Plan Development Standards identify that 125% of the increased stormwater from the site will be either retained or detained on site. So traffic impacts will occur to Red Rock Road and US 395. The 2035 Regional Transportation Plan does identify the widening of Red Rock Road in the 2022 to 2026 timeframe, as well as a phased approach to widening US 395 from North McCarran to Stead Boulevard by 2040. However, the portion from Stead Boulevard to Red Rock Road is listed in the unfunded projects. And finally, Washoe County School District is working with the applicant and will be requesting an elementary school site within the project. For military installations, the project site is close to our 3,000-foot buffer of the Reno-Stead military installations. However, it is not touching it, and there are no impacts expected either to or from the proposed amendment. Finally, as far as cumulative effects, so there is currently an abundance of entitled dwelling units within the TMSA. There are over 20,000 potential units already approved in the North Valleys, which constitutes over a third of the consensus forecast 20-year projected need. And there are roughly 90,000 potential units inside the TMSA as a whole, which equates to approximately 200% of the consensus forecast need. However, entitled units have varying degrees of near-term viability, and these units may be more near-term viable than previously approved projects. Excuse me. There are also roughly 10,000 potential housing units that are slated to sewer to the Reno-Stead Water Reclamation Facility currently. And depending on the timing of the hookup of the Silver Hills development, as well as these other approved potential units, there may be unanticipated competition for capacity. So in addition to the materials we received, there were self-imposed mitigation criteria, which were included as part of the motion for approval of this item from the Washoe County Board of County Commissioners October 22nd meeting, which you can see overhead. So one of these is that prior to the approval of any Silver Hills tentative map, the applicant shall prepare a facilities plan that ensures the concurrency of infrastructure, facilities, and services with the proposed development, including evaluating the need for a new sewer treatment facility or improvements to existing facilities, determine what critical stormwater improvements are necessary on the east side of Red Rock Road, the review of emergency access alternatives, confirmation that stormwater retention is 1 to 1.5, which is actually a 25% increase of the previous requirement I listed before that said it was 125% stormwater mitigation. These self-imposed criteria that they place on them actually ups that 25% to 150% stormwater mitigation. And also extending the water infrastructure to Washoe County Park in Silver Knolls. In addition, upon final approval of the specific plan, the applicant may only construct 150 units per year cumulatively until construction commences on the NDOT US 395 North Valleys Project, Phase 1B, which is the widening of US 395 between North McCarran Boulevard and Golden Valley Road. These are just two of the criteria that were approved by the board. There are other criteria which can be found as an attachment to the December 11th, 2019 staff report, which is included in your packet. So with that, go through just a little bit of history of where we are today. So on December 11th, 2019, we held a Regional Planning Commission meeting where the RPC found that this master plan amendment was not in conformance with the 2012 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. On January 14th, 2020, Washoe County filed an objection to that finding of nonconformance. And on January 23rd, 2020, the RPC reconsidered that action and heard Washoe County's objection and upheld their original determination of nonconformance of the master plan amendment. Following that, Washoe County filed an appeal to the finding of nonconformance on January 24th, and that's why we're here today, to hear that appeal. So with that, I'm going to lay out some options for you guys tonight. So your first option is that you can reverse the Regional Planning Commission's determination of nonconformance, which would be finding the master plan amendment in conformance with the 2012 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. Your second option would be to uphold the RPC's determination of nonconformance, finding it does not conform to the regional plan. Along with that, you may provide suggestions for changes to the proposed amendment that would bring the master plan amendment into conformance. We'll kind of guide you on that a little bit later. We will have some input on how we would go about that if that was your guys' choice with that. So I'm going to turn it over to the applicant's representative now. They're going to give a presentation, and then we'll bring it back for some possible motions and for you guys to have your discussion on the item.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr. Gordon.
Thank you. For the record, Garrett Gordon. It's a pleasure to be before you this afternoon, today representing Lifestyle Homes. In the audience behind me, I actually have 3 generations of listeners, Bob Listener, Peter Listener, and Dustin and Bailey Listener, who I would note submitted an application in October of 2017. So it's been a 2.5-year process, so we're pleased to be before you this afternoon. Also with me is Mike Raley. We're going to split this presentation in 2. I'm going to hit some of the legal findings, and then Mike can jump into the actual project specifics that we presented to Washoe County, if at your direction, Mr. Chairman, you'd like to hear it. So where do we start? We start with community meetings, of course. We've had over a dozen meetings with private citizens, 2 HOA meetings, 1 community open house at the Cold Springs Family Center, 4 NAB meetings, and finally 3 visioning workshops. And anytime you amend a area plan in Washoe County, 3 visioning workshops are required. And what came out of those? Well, when we walked into those workshops, we started with 2,340 units. We proposed 3 units per acre on either side of Red Rock Road. We pulled back the density on the east side and now are proposing 1,872 units, which is a total of 2.4 units per acre. So let me say that again. Right now on the books is 1 unit per acre. We're going from 1 up to 2.4. The next compromise is create the new Silver Hills Character Management Area. In an area plan for Washoe County, this specific one, the North Valleys Area Plan, they have character management areas of where the growth should go. Currently, this project is in the Silver Knolls Suburban Character Management Area. At the visioning workshop, we heard that the neighbors said, we do not want any changes to the Silver Knolls Character Management Area, because if we make a change for you, what's coming next and what's coming after that? So we said, okay, then we'll create our own suburban character management area. We'll incorporate, and I would suggest to you, we've incorporated probably 80 to 85% of the design standards in Silver Knolls, but just increase the density from 1, again, to 2.4. And I believe the findings that can be made for us and our specific project were not only made at the county commission, but can be made in the regional context. And finally, a stringent Silver Hills character management statement. In an area plan in Washoe County, there's a character statement. Usually it's very fluffy. Usually it says it'll be equestrian. It'll have a lot of open space. It'll preserve the ridgelines. But you'll see this afternoon when I hit that character statement, we put some very stringent criteria that this project has to comply with. And if that stringent criteria is not complied with, we never get a shovel in the ground. There's no development. Or if we want to change that criteria, or let's say there's no intent whatsoever for anyone but the listeners to develop this, but it protects this project as well because those are in the master plan, and if those are ever changed, I have to come, or the listeners have to come, or whoever has to come back to you and make those changes. So it is, I would argue, written in stone. Here's the findings that staff mentioned. I'll touch on and augment a little bit each of these. And again, we believe it does conform to the regional plan. So regional finding, regional form and pattern. Why do we think this project is appropriate? One, it's in TMSA. Of course, all of you in your context as regional governing board members understand that where should growth go in the TMSA. Number two, the regional form and plan. What's the plan in the North Valleys area plan for this area? Well, current language in the area plan is changes to an established regulatory zone, which is what we're proposing to add specific plan, which for the city representatives here is a handbook, a PUD handbook in the county's context. Changes to an established regulatory zone will not add more than 2,000 new residential units through 2025. So where does our project fit into that requirement? Our additional 1,192 is far below that 2,000 unit cap. It actually leaves 831 units for other developers to come in. So I would argue to you that this area is planned for 2,000 new residential units, and this project falls under that cap. And finally, we're located in the suburban character management area. You can see on this map, there's two character management areas in this plan, suburban and rural. You may hear this afternoon that this is a rural area. I would submit to you it's not. Per the plan, it's suburban character management area where growth is planned to proceed. And finally, your regional plan would actually allow up to 7 units per acre, and the county plan would allow up to 5 units per acre. Tonight or this afternoon, we're asking you to only go up to 2.4 units per acre. And that is the segue to this slide. You can see regional form and pattern, the density. So as I mentioned before, on Red Rock Road, we were initially proposing 3 units per acre on either side. We've pulled back on the east side of Red Rock and now are suggesting we stick with 1 unit per acre. So for a total of 2.4 units per acre, which again is under what's allowable in Washoe County Code at 5 and what's under what's allowable at the regional plan of 7. So we think it's a fair compromise and an acceptable density for this project. Again, regional form and pattern. Let's talk a little bit about compatibility with surrounding properties, surrounding land uses. This table is specifically pulled from the Washoe County Code. And what is it? It's a compatibility rating of regulatory zones with adjacent parcels. It's important to understand how we're impacting adjacent parcels. So the existing zoning, 1 dwelling unit per acre, surrounded by, and what's surrounded by this property, what's the compatibility? Well, you can see high, high, medium, high, high, high. So let's fast forward to this project, this specific plan at 3 units per acre and 1 units per acre. What's the compatibility per Washoe County Code? You can see high, high, medium, high, high, high. There's no difference. So in the world of the county commission, in the world of the Washoe County Code, and then your finding of regional form and pattern, there's no impact to the compatibility rating of the surrounding properties. And what does that mean? The bottom section I highlighted, high compatibility means little or no screening or buffering. So we could have put up our arms and said, no screening, no buffering required. But that's not what Lifestyle does. They always go above and beyond. So you can see on the east side of the property, existing 1 units per acre, there's no buffering, there's no density matches. We're putting that into our plan. You can see the orange line that runs along the eastern portion of the property is a 50-foot open space buffer in order to screen these 1 units per acre density. And also a 200-foot matching density buffer. So the residents along the east side will have a 50-foot open space buffer along with a 200-foot matching density buffer. And that's on top of the compatibility rating is already high and high. So we think this is an appropriate regional form and pattern proposal. Development constraints, you heard from staff. There's a finding that we're not impacting or proposing to develop any development constraints areas. That's absolutely right. No development constraints areas will be developed, so we also satisfy that finding. Infill, housing, jobs, housing balance. Obviously, you heard from some of the public commenters that, and all of you, obviously, as elected officials and your constituents know, we're in a housing shortage. I would submit to you that Lifestyle Homes, this is their bailiwick. This is what they do. I think you all have a little catalog of Woodland Village. This is what they build. They build what's been coined as the missing middle. And there was a similar finding required at the Washoe County Commission and Washoe County Code. So we commissioned an economic impact analysis to really understand, does this project and will it meet your regional finding and also your county commission finding? So as I highlighted here, it states, it is well known that Reno Sparks housing market experienced high levels of growth in the last few years, especially as measured by housing prices. As you head down, the analysis indicates, and this is the conclusion, that the Silver Hills development will provide much needed lower priced housing with average home prices below the new and existing single family home prices in the region. These homes will be priced slightly above homes affordable by families earning median wages in the region. I think this is most important. Attracting the type of workforce employees valuable to the region, such as police officers, nurses, librarians, accountants, and other occupations. We think that this project is at the right location at the right time and does satisfy this finding. There's a lot of jobs out there. Jobs continue to grow out in the North Valleys. There's not a good balance of jobs. There's not a balance at all of jobs versus housing. We believe this will fit that niche and meet this finding. Public services and infrastructure, very important. I have a couple more slides on this finding than others, given all of you and your agencies have been dealing with sewer, have been dealing with roads, have been dealing with stormwater. So I'll be very detailed in how we believe we meet this finding. So first of all, the regional plan goal requires local government master plans to ensure that necessary public facilities and services are or will be available. So you look at the North Valley's area plan, and we were required to commission the feasibility study on water, sewer, and stormwater that would clearly identify what improvements are required. So we commissioned these. Number one, for stormwater. We commissioned the stormwater study, and it concluded that based on our retainage basins, that the volume required for storage will exceed pre-development flows. So again, we're at approximately, and this is just a feasibility study, it certainly will be engineered further, but close to 100 acre feet of additional storage from post-development to pre-development. Water and effluent. It was a requirement by Washoe County that we connect the Tumwa, annex into the Tumwa district, that will occur, and effluent. We're submitting that all effluent will stay on site. Let me repeat that. Effluent will stay on site per our feasibility study, and as we engineer this out, we will work through the final details in the facilities plan, which I get to in a couple additional slides. Finally, roads. So as the representatives up here of Reno and Sparks, you'll know that level of service that's acceptable for RTC is D. So if I brought a tentative map to the city of Reno, if I brought a tentative map to the city of Sparks, it showed level of service D, that would be acceptable. This North Valley's area plan has an enhanced level of service. It's actually C. So no shovel goes on the ground, no tentative map is approved unless we're satisfying this enhanced criteria of level of service C. And why do we think this is good planning? Why do we think this is concurrency? Well, first of all, the RTC plan is already approved, already funded to widen Red Rock Road from 2 to 4 lanes in 2022 to 2026, which is perfect timing for this development. We don't think we'll have a shovel in the ground based on all the planning we have to do for 3-4 years. So when that road is getting widened, our tentative maps are moving forward. As long as we're meeting that level of service C, we're good. Well, also the applicant contribution. You heard on public comment that we're contributing over $8 million of impact fees, which is what could be used for this widening and for other improvements. But let me say this on the record, that if we want to move quicker than Red Rock Road widening, or Red Rock Road is widened and our development proposal, our tentative map, does not reach a level of service C, then we can't build unless we, the applicant, enters into an offset agreement with RTC and builds the improvement ourselves. So before any tentative map is approved, before any shovel is in the ground, the improvements have to be done either by RTC or by us, and we have to meet that stringent standard of level of service C, which I believe protects this neighborhood. So I mentioned to you this character statement. So normally, very kind of fluffy language. I would suggest it's similar to like a Wingfield Springs or a Collin Ranch development where it kind of lays out what, generally speaking, the development's going to look like. Well, we went above and beyond. We actually put some very stringent criteria in our character statement, which is part of the master plan, which if we ever want to change one word would have to come back to this body. And what does it say? Number one, that we're going to improve the housing jobs balance in the area. We strongly believe we're doing that. Number two, we're improving fire and police protection to the area. How are we doing that? You'll hear in a couple slides, we're self-imposing an assessment fee that would go per house, $300 per house, to both fire and the police to help mitigate and improve the area. Number three, provide support to the Silver Knolls Mutual Water Company customers. What is that? Well, in the visioning workshops, we heard from neighbors along the south side of the westerly portion of the project, where our park is located, that there's a water co-op there that has likely the worst water in not northern Nevada, but in the state. It's full of arsenic. It has many issues with the state. What are we going to do? We were asked to connect our infrastructure that would provide tunnel water down to that park for these residents to hook up to. There's no requirement, they don't have to do it, but it's going to sit there for them to hook up, which we believe will improve their quality of life. And it's not just a promise standing up here that we're going to do it. It's not, hey, we'll put it on the condition of a tentative map at some point in the future. No, it's in our character statement that we have to support that water company. Number four, I think this was probably the most important piece of my presentation, given what all of you have been dealing with over the last year, that we have to design the sanitary sewer and stormwater system to maintain levels that are at or below pre-development flows in the Swan and Silver Lakes. I know I mentioned to Commissioner Herman on the record at our last hearing that how do I interpret that provision? That not a drop of water from our development can go into either of those lakes. If we can't prove that to staff or to the Washoe County Planning Commission or ultimately to the BCC, we never get a tentative map approved and we never get a shovel in the ground. We have to design that sewer and stormwater system that levels are at or below pre-development flows into those lakes. Finally, we're designating a school site for Washoe County. We have a letter in support from Washoe County School District for the project. And finally, we had to put some kind of closing language, create a vibrant, balanced community, which we think this all does. So the summary of the public services and infrastructure, regional plan says are at or will be available. We believe our feasibility studies have showed and our character statement has showed that we in fact have backstops to make sure that that infrastructure is available. But that wasn't enough, not only for us, but for, I would assert, the Washoe County Commissioners. They wanted an extra layer of protection that concurrency and improvements were happening. So what happened? We self-imposed, which was approved by the County Commission, a facilities plan. And I'll read the full condition to you in a slide or two, but before we can move forward with the tentative map, Washoe County staff has to approve a facilities plan that ultimately goes to the county commission that says stormwater, sewer, roads are all ready to go by the time tentative map is ready to go. So another backstop to make sure you're not just taking my word for it, or the listener's word for it, but that it's written in the plan, which, by the way, will be recorded on the property. So if this property is ever sold, there's no intent of that, but certainly all of you have seen properties sell over the years. It runs with the land, so all further owners or developers have to comply with these provisions. So the final finding is cumulative and indirect effects. And a question came up was, well, why are you changing? You have approximately 600 units that were approved 10 years ago. Why are you changing 10 years later? Well, I think I first showed the housing jobs balance is necessary, that we need to fix this missing middle and provide some housing for this affordability crisis we're in. But the county code has drastically changed in the last 10 years as well. Let me read a few of these conditions or a few of these policies that we believe our project complies with now and why the change is necessary. One, define smaller areas where more intense suburban development is permitted. So not all of Silver Knolls, but a smaller area of intense suburban development, which is now Silver Hills. Mixed-use sustainable developments are extremely encouraged. We're now mixed use. We have about 40,000 square feet of commercial, along with, and Mr. Riley can get into it if you really want to get into the project specifics, but very, very sustainable development, from agri-hood to trails to open space, and it's extremely encouraged, which is why we think this handbook is appropriate. More opportunity for walking and cycling. Absolutely. You heard folks in Woodland Village said it's great trails and cycling opportunities. Again, suburban development and incorporate mixed use, that's what we're doing. Utilizing smart growth policies, that's again what we're doing in our handbook. Growth directed to existing suburban character management areas. We're in a character management area, that's where growth should be. Encourage new developments to provide appropriate design to accommodate the needs of all users, young, aging, handicapped, special needs population. Exactly what we're proposing. We're going to have all types of lot sizes, all types of product in order to accommodate a wide variety of uses. And again, don't just take my word for it. Woodland Village is a good example of what Lifestyle Homes has done. And finally, encourage development at higher densities where appropriate. This is a little bit of higher density, and we believe it's appropriate. And finally, I think if I had a favorite policy to point to, it would be the LOOT policy 2.2. Allow flexibility in development proposals to vary lot sizes, exactly what we're doing, cluster dwelling units, which is what we're doing, and use innovative approaches to site planning, which our specific plan does just that. And how, again, are we codifying to make sure we're protecting the cumulative and indirect effects? We put in our character statement, we have to improve fire and police, we have to support the water mutual customers. We have to design sanitary sewer and stormwater, again, to not put a drop of water in the Swan and Silver Lakes. And we've had the ability to do all of this in our handbook, right, in our specific plan. It's 40, 50 pages. It goes through all the design standards, and it does allow greater flexibility in order to create a development that provides public benefits. Why did we do the specific plan route? Because we knew we were going to have to absorb and take some additional conditions from staff and from the planning commissioners and the county commissioners in order to, again, deal with this cumulative and indirect effects. So at the county commission, there was an approval for 5 additional conditions, which I leave it to the Washoe County Commissioners to point if that's what got them over the hump, but I personally believe that number 1 through 5 were critical to getting this approval up to this body this afternoon. And what was the most important? It was this facilities plan, that prior to any tentative map, the applicant shall prepare a facilities plan to the satisfaction of county engineering that ensures concurrency of infrastructure, facilities, and services with the proposed development. Again, a tentative map doesn't see a light of day until we get to a facilities plan that the Washoe County Commissioners are comfortable with. And we put as many bullet points as possible that we heard from neighbors, that we heard from planning commissioners, of what we need to study. The first one is evaluate the need for a new sewer treatment facility or improvements to existing facilities. If there is no capacity at STED, when we move forward with the facilities plan, we have to build a new treatment facility. And you heard in public testimony, well, that's $100 million. That's never going to happen. Well, the listeners, Lifestyle Homes built a sewer plant in Woodland Village, and there was approximately $10 million. So they feel comfortable if there's not capacity at Stead, no shovel goes in the ground, no tentative map until we build our own sewer treatment facility, which they will in fact be comfortable doing or have to do in order to move forward. Number two, what critical stormwater improvements are necessary on the east side of Red Rock Road? 3, review all emergency access alternatives. This came up in public comment, so we put it into this facilities plan. And this is important too. I know staff addressed it, but let me just harp on it. Right now, Washoe County code requires 1-to-1 water retention. We're going from 1-to-1 to 1.5, a 50% increase. So post-development flows have to be 50% better than pre-development flows. And not only have to take our word for it or show it on the tentative map, we had to show the facilities plan actually accomplishes that, again, above and beyond. And finally, you'll see it again, and we made a commitment. We're going to move forward with that infrastructure, the Washoe County Park at Silver Knolls. Another condition, we know Red Rock Road's getting widening, but we also know that US 395 has some projects as well. So we were self-imposed and required by the county commission that upon final approval of this specific plan, the applicant may only construct 150 units per year until construction commences on phase 1B. Again, concurrency. We have Red Rock widening, we have 395 project moving forward, we have sewer treatment improvements happening at Stead, but if not, then again, we have to build it or no tentative map. And I would just note, the 150 units is the ceiling. We still have to do a facilities plan, tentative map, comply with the character statement to get 1 unit. As I mentioned, this assessment fee, I think this is the first time in the county that this has occurred. For every unit built in Silver Hills, $300 will go to the fire department and $300 will go to the sheriff. It's about between $500,000 and $600,000 for each department. I know the fire department came and testified in favor of the project at the county commission process. So we believe that, again, that mitigates the cumulative and indirect effects. And I would note that second bullet point on the fire department, we're also going to install fire hydrants along the path of the required infrastructure as required by the fire chief. There's no fire hydrants in this area right now. We're self-imposing, it's a condition, it runs with the land. Fire hydrants have to go in along our infrastructure, which we think is a win-win for this community. Finally, there were 2 others. The CC&Rs will severely restrict water use in front yards and require drought-tolerant landscaping options. And in some cases, the HOA may own and maintain some landscape strips and yards. And finally, the project shall include at least 1 dog park. So in conclusion, at the county process, we had support from the fire chief. It was approved by the Washoe County Board of Commissioners. Your staff is recommending approval. Your staff is saying that this project does in fact meet regional findings. And I don't get to say this very often. I got to say it one time at the county commission. I get to say it one more time tonight. Hopefully it happens more often. But we have a letter from the Sierra Club in support of this project. And let me read this, the highlighted portions, because I think this goes to how much time and effort our project team put into making sure this project was a win-win for the community. The Sierra Club says, there are elements and concepts in this proposal that could offer positive economic, social, and environmental benefits to our community, which we support. And in conclusion, there are elements that every community will need to embrace if we are to successfully mitigate and adapt to climate change. We appreciate Lifestyle Homes for being on the leading edge of proposing such design for our community. So we're very happy for that endorsement. We spent a lot of time on this project. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation. We brought the specific plan presentation. You can see that really gets into the more details of the plan and the project. Not sure it's appropriate for the regional plan analysis, but we're happy to go through it now or later if you want us to, and I appreciate you listening to me.
Sounds good. Do you guys have any questions for Mr. Gordon? Commissioner Hartung?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gordon, or perhaps one of Mr. Listener's staff members, Ms. Baroli or somebody else, can talk about this. Can you talk about the agri-hood concept and how you're going to deal with the the use of the agricultural component in the open space? And then also, can you talk about the potential for solar offset on each one of the dwelling units, and then the concept that potentially might be brought forward with respect to some solar farms?
Commissioners, thank you. Wendy Baroli for the record. Yeah, so the reason I'm involved with this is because of the agrihood. Because I think that there has to be some sort of mitigation between urbanization and, although it's not zoned rural, the feel of rural communities. And what an agrihood does, that's exactly what it does. It takes the components of a lifestyle of having backyard chickens, of having your own milk goat, of having land available set aside for beekeeping, and it brings that into a community planned environment. So it's not necessarily 1 acre mini farms, but it is a centralized farm where the entire design is to bring that community into that central gathering place. So agrihoods not only just create community, they also take the environment that we have with urbanization, and they put that urbanization into an environment that says that we can match those things with rural type communities, which is why we have the 1-to-1 lot matching 1 acre lot horse properties with custom homes, which is why we have equestrian trails built into our project, which is why all of the things that we do, from the edible gardens to mini parklets that are designed within this program, to create a community so that each neighborhood, as it's built, as we break it out, people have their own mini orchard, they have their own community garden. And it's the same thing that's happening within the urban environment in Reno Sparks, yet we never see it happen for our kids out in the North Valleys. So this provides that interface between the urbanization that is happening. And if you look at the map that was presented by staff, you can see that this is no longer an isolated community. Reno is smack right up dab to the edge of this community. And we need to do something rather than put more roofs over the top of it. So that's what an agrihood will do. And it's not just trees, it's programs. It's a community designed to keep people to live within that community. So instead of activities getting into a car on 395 and going into Reno to go to, I don't know, Urban Roots to have a class, their classes will be within their community, which means less car travel. There are a lot of things that agrihoods do within the community that change how we interface in our urban environments as it continues to expand. So those are some of the really great, exciting things about agrihoods. The other part of it is that our North Valley's kids are often latchkey kids. They're the kids that our parents are leaving every morning at 6:30 and going across town or out to, out to USA Parkway and working. So their kids have nothing for them there. What an agrihood does is it provides parks, activities, and a gathering place, a place to call home rather than just randomly running around. And we know we have challenges with that. We have challenges with graffiti. We know we have challenges with juvenile crime because there's nothing for them to do. Communities make a difference, and that's what an agrihood does. It's more than roofs. It's more than apartments. It's actually creating an environment in which we are going to have people living together and caring about one another. So that's the human side of this. The cool, exciting thing is that the listeners are willing to either make these houses solar ready so that every single person, not just people who live in South Reno or people who can afford solar, but solar ready. If that seems to be the best way to go forward, our houses will be solar ready so that we're ready to take up the technology to lessen this. And then if that doesn't work, Bob has actually doing some research to think about an off-site small-scale solar utility farm. These are the innovative ideas that will be put in place because that's the only way we can go forward. That's the way that we change how our region grows as we move outside of our city limits.
Yeah, Commissioner.
Just one more follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Broly, I know we've talked about the solar component. How about battery walls? Will that be an option for these homes as well?
So what I understand, honestly, Commissioner, is that we are going to bring in some people to bid and find out if a solar wall is the ideal thing. And it sure makes sense, since Tesla's building the solar walls to get them into our homes.
Okay. And how about, with respect to the agri-hood, have you reached out to the university's cooperative extension, and would you work backwards with the 4-H program in this
Well,
area?
that's another interesting thing. So our community center, that may look like a barn. We haven't completely figured that all out. But we're going to provide a place for 4-H, for FFA, and I've already reached out to the high school, the North Valleys High School, and there are a number of educators who are very excited to have ag-related programs in the summertime. So the kids can be able to do those kinds of activities there at a gathering place in the summertime.
Thank you, Ms. Baroli. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Bybee.
I have several questions, probably for Mr. Gordon.
Thank you.
And Chair, if you'll indulge me, I've got a number of questions I'd like clarification on. When we talk about the Silver Hills is proposing to reuse all effluent, how is that going to happen, and especially in the winter, when we all know with our effluent in the rest of the Truckee Meadows, wintertime doesn't need the use. So how are you going to reuse it, and or will it be stored? And I guess that goes to whether it's retention or detention basin, because those are two very different concepts. Could you address that?
For the record, Mike Raley with Christie Corporation. So what we plan to do is retain, the effluent will be brought back to the site. We will have essentially retention ponds to hold the effluent during the winter months. So if you look through our feasibility study, we have a series of retention and detention basins in order to make sure that we can meet that 1 to 1.5 offset. But we will have retention basins so that in the wintertime, there will be storage for that effluent.
And for the detention side of that, where would that be released? Because we've already talked about Swan Lake. Will it only be released within the use of effluent in parks in your agri-hood? And is that kind of what your concept?
As the standard says, we can't increase any additional flows off. So some of the water will, continue to drain as it always has, but we will be holding it back. So essentially, it's a 50% reduction on the water that's coming off the site.
Okay. Then going to the, thank you for that. On the road construction and Red Rock Road, because that is in the 2022 to 2026 plan, and I'm looking at your 150 homes per year, I think you're within, hopefully service level, well, you have to be, the service level that you need on Red Rock. However, with the 395 expansion that's not looking until 2040, you're actual at 150, if you're still allowed to do the 150 homes per year, you actually would be, where's my numbers? You would have the full amount of homes you're asking for today would be built in 12.48, so a little more than 12 and a half years. And would US 395 still not be, it could still not be completed because we're not to 2040. So 2040, and I understand too, if we're doing 150 a year, that also for me, it's not like 2,000 homes are going to be there tomorrow. So I understand the phasing. I understand this isn't like tomorrow this impact will be, but looking at that 395, which is probably, without doubt, one of the worst corridors forever, last 20 years, if it's not done until 2040, your homes would all be built at a phasing time, but I'm kind of concerned about that impact.
I think there's a couple of factors to consider on that. First, the 150 homes per year was kind of based on our traffic analysis of what we thought was sustainable. I think as was mentioned previously, Lifestyle Homes is currently in Woodland Village is not building anywhere near 150 homes per year. So we actually anticipate our build out to be longer. But we would love to say we hope that it's 150 a year. But I think the other thing that's very important to consider is that level of service C requirement that's in the area plan. And I can almost guarantee that if the freeway is functioning that bad, those ramps and whatnot at the Red Rock, that's going to fall well below a level of service C, which wouldn't allow us to continue building at all. So I think there's almost like a checks and balance in place within the area plan itself.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other, Councilman Lawson? Commissioner Lawson?
Councilman, Commissioner, whatever. Begin. Away we go. I have several questions too. Garrett, where would I find all of this stuff memorialized where, I mean, it all sounds good. Remember Star Bonds? We were gonna have all these great tourist places in Sparks and all these wonderful things were gonna happen, and we ended up with a tourist-based Target, tourist-based Lowe's, so people could drive from Truckee and buy a hammer. So where's all this memorialized? Where can I find it so that, just in case, God forbid, anything happens to the listeners, and I wouldn't know the listeners if they walked up to me today. So I gotta base my decision on what can we hold the future developers' feet to the fire on? Where would I find that info?
For the record, Garrett Gordon, thank you for the question. So let me do an analogy to City of Sparks. So just like Wingfield Springs Plan Unit Development, everything I've set up here today, everything I've promised up here today, everything I've referred to today in Sparks would be all memorialized in the Plan Unit Development Handbook. For example, Wingfield Springs, which is recorded on the property, runs with the land in perpetuity. So our specific plan, which is what it's called in the county, all of this is memorialized in that specific plan that, well, take a step back. All of the design criteria are in the specific plan, but the other provisions I mentioned in the character statement and the facilities plan, that's also in the area plan, which runs with the land and is part of the master plan. So you have two backstops to your question. Number one, the cumulative effects and the character statement provisions are in the master plan that runs with the land. If you ever want to change it, you got to come back to this body. And two, we have a specific plan handbook that's recorded on the property that makes sure we have to comply and move forward with this project. If we want to change it, we have to come back through this process.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
And if I can just add to that, the county is a little unique, and there's actually a third backstop. And the county is unique is that they take our specific plan handbook, and it gets adopted as an element of the North Valley's area plan. So unlike Sparks and Reno, where if you want to amend the PUD handbook, it's a zone change process. In the county, it is a master plan amendment process, which adds another layer of review because that would have to come to regional.
So for example, where would I find, let's just take on your self-imposed mitigation, evaluate the need for new sewer treatment facility or improvements to existing facilities. What does evaluate mean?
How I interpret evaluate is,
I mean, I want to know where it means, where I can read it and we both have the same understanding of it. Because I don't want to be 5 years from now and, evaluate means I got a letter from Ed Lawson who said we're okay.
so that number one facilities plan, that condition that was required by the county commissioners is going into chapter 4 of our specific plan. So every tentative map that moves forward has to comply with that section. Now, specific to number one, we would have to, prior to a tentative map, again, evaluate the need for a new sewer treatment facility. I interpret that as is there capacity for the project? Is there capacity or is there not? If there's capacity for the project and we can get a will serve letter from from Washoe County for STED, then I think we've evaluated it. We have capacity. If there's no capacity, then we need to evaluate a backup plan of where do we build a sewer treatment plant? What's the capacity of that? How's it designed? How do we work through Washoe County staff to make sure? And again, this plan ultimately goes up to the county commissioners to confirm that we have evaluated it appropriately, that staff's analysis of our evaluation is confirmed, and the ultimate backstop is the county commission to make sure before a tentative map is approved, we've evaluated it to conclude there's capacity.
So at this level, we should just trust and move on.
At this level, I would
That's what you're telling me. I'm not trying to be adversarial here, but I think these are questions that need to be answered. And I don't think that you plan it after you've already approved it. I don't like that approach. We don't do that in Sparks. We have our plan in place. We know how much sewer. We know where we're going to get our effluent is going. We know all of those questions in advance.
So again, for the record, Garrett Gordon, we also have to know that in advance. But for purposes of today, I'm looking at your regional plan policy, and it says the Regional Planning Governing Board needs to require that master plans ensure necessary public facilities are or will be available and adequate at the time of the impacts of development occur. Then we also go to the county master plan as far as the feasibility study, and it says we have to study water, sewer, stormwater that clearly identifies improvements likely to be required to support the intensification. So your regional plan and the Washoe County plan doesn't require we stand up here with a will serve letter today for capacity or that we can meet level of service today. This is just the master plan and zone change. But to your point, and not to speak for the county commission, but they were dead on with where you were coming from and said, well, we want another backstop. We want this facilities plan. Don't waste your time on a tentative map or on any development until you come show us that now will be available, but that it is available. So that middle point of the facilities plan, I think, addresses your question to make sure when development's ready to go, that the improvements are ready as well.
I think, just for a little background, is that was part of my job in my last career, was reading contracts. And words mean things in contracts, and definitions definitely mean things in contracts. I haven't seen any of that so far. Now, I don't know if that's our fault from the Regional Planning Governing Board side, or your fault, or I'm not smart enough to figure out where it is, but I have not seen any of that. So I'm just curious, because I've seen this before, where we make these big promises and then nothing happens, or something well below what the promises were happens.
I would, if I can answer the question, I believe that no promises are being made that aren't codified in our documents, that we have in our character statement. No additional flows can go into those two lakes, which is not a promise, is a requirement. We have a requirement of a facilities plan to make sure we have proper infrastructure. We have additional feasibility studies and engineering that has to take place. So there's all these steps that are required in order to, the promises, I guess, we're making, or our intentions, is all codified to protect from the regional level all the way down to the county level. Is why I think we've spent 2.5 years on this to make sure that everything we've said on the record and everything we intend to do is memorialized in the documents.
Last question, I'll yield back, sorry, Mr. Chair. Why the widening only to Golden Valley? Why aren't we widening it all the way up to Red Rock? And who's gonna pay for the interchange of 395 and Red Rock? That's an expensive venture, just widening that enough to handle traffic to go under the freeway.
I would note that when we worked on that condition number 2 for 395, that, and you can pull up this might go to Councilmember Bybee's question as well, is the phase 1B improvements that are referenced here are actually designed and planned to go by in like the 2026 timeframe. So we think it kind of falls perfectly. Those improvements are happening, Red Rock's happening, there's capacity at Stead happening, and we can move forward. So that's how we tied up concurrency. But to your point though, council member, this came up at the county commission. And when we bring forward our facilities plan, if there is a problem with traffic that we haven't intended or we haven't thought of, or that intersection has more problems than we anticipated, then I think we're going to have a problem at the county commission with a facilities plan if we're not meeting level of service C, or 395 has its own issues. So that backstop that the county put in for the facilities plan will address your concern when we're ready to move forward to make sure that our vision of how all the pieces are coming together, in fact, are.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Breckus?
Yeah, I mean, I want to thank everyone who came here and spoke in favor of the project. I think it sounds like a very well-designed project, a nice community to live in, and a developer with a great track record. However, sitting here from this regional perspective, the questions that are most, pressing on me are, is it the right time and the right place? And because when you get there, it looks nice, but on the regional timing and place today is where I kind of want to focus, following off on my colleagues' questions. You're saying no water is going to go into Swan Lake from this project, but presently the Risworth, the Reno sewer plant, which is more or less at capacity, goes into Swan Lake. And I'm not going to ask you, because sitting at Reno, I know where we're trying to go, thinking about going with Risworth. to bring on the growth that may or may not happen. And that is hoping that we can get some pipelines out to American Flat, get to a point to pipe effluent down, and someday maybe the water purveyor pull it up, but we're not there yet. Yesterday, the Reno City Council is in the process of issuing $55 million in bonds to expand the plant with a $90 million reservoir to relieve it. And then that doesn't include, and our public works director won't even fathom a guess of what he thinks this project's being done because they're still trying to figure out the science on it. But I am concerned that the number that this is going to put onto Reno in that infrastructure is going to blow us up. And it's going to blow us up because we've also got Tumworth knocking at our door. Sparks wants Tumworth expanded yesterday. And the load of cost to Reno residents, ratepayers that I represent in Old Southwest and Northwest Reno and Midtown area, Collin Ranch, are going to be carrying the cost of your statement of not putting another drop of water into Swan Lake. So I guess maybe this infrastructure plan you're talking about will have a big idea so that we can understand, are you and everyone who's going to Risworth going to pay for that, or are the ratepayers going to pay twice that I represent? Because they're paying for Tumworth, because that's getting full, and this is never going to be afforded by the Risworth people. So when you say no water is going to go from this development into Swan Lake, you're aware or not aware that we don't even know? We've got a problem with Swan Lake now. Are you betting on this project to go out to American Flats? Is that part of your concept there?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Breckus. Always appreciate it. So, a couple things. One is this issue came up, and we wanted to make sure we memorialized it in a document that we'd have to apply our tentative maps in our project against. So we know that from a post-development flows perspective, we cannot drain into those lakes. In addition to that, City of Reno, North Valleys, there was a project the other night that your new standard up there is 1 to 1.3, right? 30%. We've gone above and beyond that from 1 to 1.5 to 50%. So we think that's another protection in order to satisfy the facilities plan. When you mentioned a second ago, the science isn't all the way done, there's different moving parts. When we're ready to go, that facilities plan has to meet the satisfaction of staff and the county commission to move it forward. But let me say number 3, Woodland Village is in the county. Woodland Village, there was no sewer capacity. Woodland Village, they built a sewer infrastructure and a sewer tank. That didn't impact your constituents, I would argue, $1. That was $10 million out of the listener's development budget to build that sewer treatment plant to service Woodland Village. We would anticipate that in the event there's no capacity at Stead, and of course we pay sewer connection fees and all those mitigating requirements, that we would have to build, just like Woodland Village, a sewer treatment plant as well. And if we didn't, or we couldn't afford it, or the science changed in 3 to 5 years, or there was other elements that you've mentioned of how to get there, that will be flushed out in the facilities plan. That will be evaluated by the county commission. But I'm here not to say, take my word for it, that this is what we may or may not do. I think the Lifestyle has a proven record of what's been done in Woodland Village and what can be done in Silver Hills that wouldn't impact your constituents.
I don't know, if I may respond, I don't think that you can make that statement. We have experienced sewer rate increases of 32% in 8 years for the Reno residents, and those numbers to bring a plant for your capacity is going to hit the household costs that we have, and a big number. And so I don't know that the information's available to help us know that Reno residents are not going to be paying for your project and their own project of Tumworth, and it's going to hold off Tumworth's expansion when these numbers start to get known. And that is the timing question to me. But I want to go back over to the road issue. The project, and I did see the current RTIP, and maybe this is when our public facilities plan we'll be able to refer to that in the RTIP, but I've been seeing an acceleration of North Valley's projects on the RTIP, and they're jumping over the maintenance of our existing deteriorating infrastructure in the core, which then in turn harms our ability to do the infill development that we think we need to recycle land and build the most affordable housing and, not have people so auto-dependent, erode their air quality and so on. How do I look at this from a regional perspective when I know and see that projects like yours, Red Rock Road, this expansion, are leapfrogging over maintaining deteriorating infrastructure in the core?
I would say that this is planning and concurrency at its finest. We started this project with a need for housing, for the housing shortage, and to fill this missing middle. That's where we started with, right? Now we had to move through all the infrastructure analysis. And what happened? I'm not coming to you saying, guess what? I'm going to have to go to RTC and amend their RTP and get Red Rock Road on it. It's already included. It's already there. It's already planned. It's already planned for two additional lanes, and it has the backstop of level of service C. And what's the timing of that? It falls exactly when we think we'd start construction. So that's, I would argue, very good planning and concurrency. The county commission believed they also wanted to tie this to phase 1B to make sure there was another backstop, that 395 improvements were happening as well. So that's why we're capped at that 150 units during that time. But there's also the facilities plan for infrastructure. And we have to come show and prove to the county commission, and again, I keep mentioning this facilities plan, but this is the first time, and I've worked on a project that kind of self-imposed another step to make sure we're addressing all your questions. That on the road side, when the facility plans come, has Red Rock started? Has it stopped? Where are you in the process? Is your tentative map going to get level service C? Is it not? Where are we on 395? You said 150 units, phase 1B. Has that commenced? Has it not? Are there other considerations, like Council Member Lawson mentioned, of the interchange? Are there huge problems there? What's that level of service? All of that analysis, I would argue, happened already with the level of service C analysis, but that facilities plan makes sure, from your point, a regional perspective, that the planning and the infrastructure and the concurrency and the services of our first tentative map is all happening at the same time and meeting these standards. So I think this facilities plan not only was good planning for Washoe County, but good for the regional planning to make sure that there's not just promises being made, but that there's a plan in effect to move this project forward. And hopefully it's a template for other developments to do a facilities plan, I would think.
I appreciate that response, and I'll turn it over. It's just, to me, sometimes the approval is self-perpetuating, that then the plans then become the option. And the option then is that repairing the deteriorating infrastructure in the core falls off, and the large expenditure for this plant, which will be carried by other ratepayers, becomes the priority. But I have questions about this housing when we get back to our staff, and the demand sides when we have questions for our staff. But thank you very much for those.
Anything else from? Yeah, Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you. Mr. Lloyd, would you come up for just a moment? Will we issue one C of O without all of the infrastructure being in place and accounted for?
And through the chair, Commissioner Hartung, no, Washoe County will not issue a building permit unless all of the infrastructure and services are in place.
Okay. Okay, thank you. No. Mr. Raley and Mr. Gordon, when you put in the infrastructure to sewer these houses, will you put in an effluent return line at the same time?
Yes, that's our plan. And I think, and going back to Councilman Lawson's question about that infrastructure and that facilities plan, I know when you start comparing Washington County process to City of Sparks process, sometimes a little bit of apples to oranges. This is really no different than what occurs in the City of Sparks, like what we're doing in Kylie Ranch, what's happened in Wingfield Springs and I always get Stonegate, Stonebrook, where those handbooks were approved, basically the land uses were approved, then everything is ferreted out at the time of tentative map in terms of sewer, traffic. There's a master traffic study, but at tentative map, we have to show compliance. If we're changing something, if we're changing alignments of intersection, anything, we have to show that we are consistent with those things that are being approved. So essentially, this is the exact same thing, yet we've added another layer on top of it. So it's really not any different than what occurs in Reno or Sparks. I would say we've held ourselves to an even more stringent standard with this.
Okay. And then I'm gonna put either you, Mr. Gordon, or the developer on the spot. Would it be possible to also add an effluent line going up to the Silver Knolls Park so that it could be watered with effluent from the Reno Stead plant?
For the record, Garrett Gordon, yes.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Do we have any questions of staff before I open it up for public comment? Yeah, Ms. Breckes?
Did we want to talk about fire and EMS services, Mr. Chair?
Probably, yeah.
Can I call my fire chief up?
I think Ms. Breckes had a
I'm sorry.
question real quick, and then.
Yeah. Sorry, these lights. In your, I wrote down your comment, and you said it's not infill, and one of the parameters we're trying to advance is infill. And infill is essentially, a definition I call recycling land that we've used, that we want to see reuse, because we have a lot of dead commercial, we want to envision that, or the sequence of not skipping over land that's on the path of development. That's the timing and sequence. So you said there's, it's not infill, so, but how do we look at if it's not infill? You said there's other developments that are further out. So there's ones that even leapfrog further from the infill land. What are those?
There's a variety of things up in the North Valleys, Evans Ranch being one of those entitlements, Silver Star Ranch, the variety of others. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but those are a few examples.
Are there also some that are in the path closer in that are approved?
Yeah, absolutely. There are ones closer to a region's core that are approved. Any of these entitlements, though, it is hard to know when they will come online, right, when they'll build out. So kind of weighing the near-term viability of these different entitlements kind of was part of what we were looking at in our analysis.
So, but you're showing that this cumulative impact slide, that on some level, some determination, we have enough lots out there of the single family within the TMSA.
Correct. If all of these entitlements were to build, we have enough. Yet again, we don't know when these will build. I will say that this amendment site currently is one of those entitlements. It just has a lower number of units entitled on it.
Sure.
And so I think from staff's perspective, there are already going to be impacts and benefits to the current entitlement. And we saw the proposed amendment to this as having a greater benefit than the current entitlement.
Yeah, and maybe that's when we do our public facilities plan, we'll be able to look at it a little more full scope. But that's the problem I'm struggling with, is to commit to this. If it drives Red Rock expansion, it kicks off other projects. If it has that big number, it kicks off the Stead plan expansion. And that's the trouble. But thank you for putting the landscape of the infill, because we have to make a finding, related to infill here today.
Correct, yeah. And I will say that this is not infill, but not all projects are going to be infill.
Sure, that's the sequential nature. Thanks.
Anything else? I was going to call fire up Chief Moore. If you could come out if there's any questions from us. I'm assuming you might have something, Commissioner Hartung? Not to put you on the spot.
No, to the chief. Thank you. So Chief, I know we've talked about a 7-point plan, and we've talked about fire safety in the area right now, the fact that there's virtually no hydrants out there? What's our plan, and how will this transpire?
Thank you for the question. For the record, Charlie Moore, Fire Chief for Truckee Meadows Fire. May I have the overhead on, Mr. Gordon? I'll need to slide some of your papers over. So if you could zoom in on kind of this area right here. So right now, Silver Lake and Lemon Valley are two of our stations that are currently volunteer. And in those particular areas, we have the longest response times in our service area. In fact, they create a problem for us in that we don't meet our standards of cover. So our plan is to take what you see there as Station 13, it's actually Station 44, and to move that, the career element to Station 221, which is the development area, Silver Knolls, and another crew to 223 in Lemon Valley. How we're going to do that is a long explanation, and I won't bore you with that, but that plan would unfold somewhere around 2024 to 2025 for a rather modest investment, we believe, of about $600,000, which is not even 2% of my budget. So we're seeing response times to Silver Knolls that are somewhere around 12 to 15 minutes. That's way too long. Same thing for Lemon Valley. So what you see there at Station 13, the orange is the City of Reno jurisdiction. So we're smack dab in the City of Reno. We're not called to help the City of Reno in that area. So it doesn't make sense that we keep that station there. It makes more sense that we put the station where our customers are and where where the incidents happen. So there's really, I think, seven things that will improve fire protection there. And I believe I heard the applicant put up a slide there that said that I support the project. I don't think it's my job to support or oppose the project. What it is my job is to present a plan and to figure out how I'm going to serve growth and to recommend to my fire commissioners how we're going to do that. So I have a plan that supports the development, but I don't necessarily support or oppose the development. So one, obviously water. There's no significant distribution of water through fire hydrants out there right now. So if the development comes in and we have municipal distribution of water, we have to have water. There's 4 things I need to be able to put out a fire, and that's water, access, manpower, and tools and equipment. So if you don't have any one of those 4 things, you're not going to be able to put out a fire successfully. Right now, our technology is we have to truck the water from Station 1344 all the way up to 221. So we'd rather have a distribution of water in hydrants there. That will improve. Thing 2, you've seen the signs from the cooperative extension: remove the fuels, reduce the risk. The development itself is an enormous fire break. Right now, we have no break in the continuity of fuels that come out of the wildlands into the development. So when you introduce roads and you introduce buildings and you introduce some irrigated landscape, perhaps xeriscape, you're reducing the wildland fuels that are a problem for us, and that's mostly sagebrush. The building codes, of course, are going to be state-of-the-art. So you're going to have building materials on the homes that meet the current codes. And so those things are reducing the fuels quite a bit. So, you know, I know that people get concerned that, gee, we're introducing buildings and we're going to have a big problem with wildland. I actually believe it's the opposite. When you introduce subdivisions, you're removing the fuels and you're reducing the wildfire risk when you use modern codes and you do a master plan for wildfire planning. I lost track of my bullets, but I'm going to get 7. I think there's 7 in there somewhere, Commissioner. We are in hot pursuit of a federal grant to do fuels mitigation outside of the project area. There's something called an FMAG grant that my deputy is pursuing, and there's millions of dollars available to Northern Nevada right now, and there's only 2 departments that would actually qualify for it. One is East Fork and one is TM. So we think that we're we're going to be successful in getting hundreds of thousands of dollars to do fuels mitigation outside of the project area. And then finally, of course, the fire station. In my talks with the developer, I mentioned that our problem is with an elongated response time. He committed to providing impact fees to develop the fire station such that we could add crew quarters and place a fire crew, full-time career fire crew at that station 24/7. So that will take, it's not a whole new fire station, it's just simply in addition to the existing volunteer station there. It is bedrooms and it's some kitchen expansion and some restrooms. And that can probably be done in today's dollars for about $500,000. So, with that, putting those things in place, that significantly increases the fire safety and the fire response and the fire service to the applicant's development as well as the people that currently live there.
Any other? Commissioner Weber?
Thank you, Chief Moore. I wanted to ask a question, and thank you, because you've done a lot of work on this, and I want to thank the listeners and for this kind of a development. But what I wanted to ask you is, there's not been fire hydrants out in this area. Could you explain why? Because it's county properties out. They had a volunteer fire department. I mean, could you explain a little bit about that?
Well, I'd say the reason why that there's no fire hydrants is simply the cost, is there has to be development to support the infrastructure.
Exactly.
And it's millions of dollars to put in water lines and fire hydrants and water tanks and to treat that water. So unless there's development to support the infrastructure, then the infrastructure doesn't go in my opinion.
Right, and in communities that have been around, if there's a possibility to have fire hydrants, that's a great thing for everyone in the community.
Indeed, not only for just putting out a fire, but your insurance rates improve for everybody that's within 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant. No matter who put it in, you get the insurance benefit.
Right, so it'll protect other neighbors and other communities. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions for the chief? Awesome. Thank you, Chief Moore. I had a question for probably Mr. Riley or Gord, one of you two. Looking at all the answers we've had today, I know we're going to record it on the deed. So if that was to be approved today, does that go right out to our county recorder? This whole thing gets stuck in there, or how does that work?
So we obviously update the handbook with all the voluntary conditions or anything that would be potentially added today. That gets submitted to county staff. It actually gets recorded. It becomes part of the North Valley's area plan. So it becomes part of the county's plan.
Okay. And then to make any changes to any of those would come back to county, to the BCC or to us? Or?
It would, so if we wanted to change any portion of the plan, because it's part of the county master plan, it's a master plan amendment. So that would go to the Washington County Plan, it will go to the CAB, the Washington County Planning Commission, Board of County Commissioners, and back to regional for conformance review.
Thank you for confirming. RPC.
Don't mean to correct Mr. Raley. Mr. Raley was correct in that in the past, that's always been the process for a specific plan to include that document as part of the area plan. However, that process has changed slightly. It is a zoning document. It's not a master plan document, so it would not come back to regional if there was an amendment specifically to the specific plan. So I just wanted that to be on record.
So then final approval would be the BCC?
It would be the BCC, correct.
Yeah. I apologize. The only reason I said is we just amended a specific plan in Spanish Springs and it had conformance, so literally 2 weeks ago. So I apologize.
No problem. You have something to say, Mr. Gordon?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I know that staff had mentioned the ability for this body to make changes tonight. If it got this body more comfortable that if we made a change to our specific plan, that you wanted it to come back for regional review, we'd be willing to do that. Our commitment is to make sure that this body and the regional findings can in fact be satisfied with regards to what we're proposing tonight. So hopefully that gives little bit more comfort if that's necessary.
Gotcha.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion before I open up for public comment? Ms. Pat? Oh. Whenever you want, Ms. Shirley.
Okay. I just wanted to make a general, my conclusion. I make my decisions based on a lot of information, and a lot of information was provided here, and I really appreciate that. I met with people opposed to this. I met with the developer and his representatives, really looking at what staff, what the Washoe County Commissioners, the Planning Commission, reading through everything I could get my hands on to find out where we were, how we got there, and what this meant. I think at the end of the day, this isn't infill, but as regional planning staff has said, in a way it is, because we are growing. We're growing at all in all directions. We're sitting in a big bowl, constrained by mountains and by this big valley we all live in together. Infill that we're looking at, which is a part of this, this body has talked about infill in the McCarran Loop and how important that is. And infill I still think is important as far as reuse of land, smaller projects. There's no infill property within that McCarran Loop that can accommodate 1,800 or 2,000 homes. It's not there. So we have to find within our community where on our perimeters, as we continue to grow, is there land available that we can do projects to meet a housing crisis? And that's what we're in. I mean, I've got a son who, young millennial with 2 kids who can't afford a house right now. People who are renting have rents that keep going up and up and up. And so I've always felt just the need for us to build multifamily and single-family homes as fast as we can is critical to us addressing one of the toughest challenges that we meet as we try to expand our economy and we bring people here. We don't have anywhere for them to live or to rent, and that's a critical issue facing all of us here. I'm on the EDON board, Spark City Council. Every day we wrestle with affordable housing, but workforce housing, not low income, workforce housing. And that's what this project provides. It's in the TMSA, which is a 20-year planned growth. We're looking at 20 years in the TMSA. We're looking at a phasing project. It's not 1,800 homes that will be here next week or next year or in 2 or 3 years. As we phase this, we'll be growing every other corner of this valley. We'll be growing. And I'm looking at Sparks and our Kiley Ranch and Stonebrook in my ward. Tons of housing coming, but it's needed right now. I mean, we're looking at a need of 45,000 housing units that we need in the region right now. And in the North Valleys, 20,000 have been approved, but they haven't been built. So at the end of the day, we have to, as elected leaders, and some of those decisions are hard, we need to have the housing for sure. We need to do it with planned, smart growth, and that's what we're all trying to do here, is to make smart decisions and not just throw things where it looks good today and then another recession hits, or it's not smart planning and it affects our whole quality of life in this region, which we want to preserve. I think what for me is important, because my concerns were all on infrastructure, because on a daily basis I have infrastructure concerns in this whole region, whether it's city councils or the Washoe County Commission or this board. Infrastructure on a nationwide basis is in critical need across our country. So the infrastructure concerns for me were real. The Washoe County Facilities Plan that this project has brought with the backstops to it, I think addresses those needs, and for me, answers my concerns as it continues to grow, that these things are required. You're not just telling me, Mr. Gordon, that, oh yeah, we'll take care of it. It's in writing, it's in the condition, it's in the requirements for you to do that, not just to say you're going to do it, because that's critically important to everyone in the community. I like the fire safety, police, roads, all of those are important, but I think that the facilities plan and what you presented us today and the need that we have to meet for workforce housing throughout this region, every project that comes before us, there are going to be people that are opposed for very good reason, and I have to listen to people's opposition and why, and weigh it against, what is the best benefit to our community. So I appreciate everyone who approached us in opposition and in support of this and the information that you provided. And I feel at the end of the day, the facilities plan is my insurance for the concerns, the very real concerns that I have. And I appreciate all the work that staff did and all the work that everyone on this project has done to look at bringing us workforce housing, which we desperately need. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Reese?
Chairman Abbott, thank you. I actually probably will direct my comments to Mr. Acevedo and Ms. Prunty. I'm trying to understand, as far as our role today, we have to deal with at least some of the slides regarding conformance. And one of the conformance issues is compatibility of the proposed plans with goals and policies regarding infill development, housing and jobs, housing balance. And I don't understand that statement entirely. As I read it, and lawyers tend to parse words, that's infill development, comma, housing, comma, and jobs, housing, balance. I don't have to check all those boxes, do I?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, defer that question to your director.
Mr. Chair, Chairman Smith, for the record. Yeah, thank you. I think what we recognize, given the situation here in the Truckee Meadows, is that it would be very, very difficult to accommodate all of the growth that we anticipate through what's classically termed infill. So what you might expect would be a site like the Park Lane Mall site, for instance, is a very good example of an infill project that's happening and really great. There are sites like that. We do have our mixed-use corridors in areas with very, almost unlimited sort of zoning potential. There's a reality to that, obviously. But to Councilwoman Brex's point regarding the sequential and orderly management of growth, that is in our state statute in regards to the contents of the regional plan. And it's not necessarily a concentric thing. That would be easier. But in fact, it ends up being pretty difficult. And that's why we're so concerned about creating this understanding of what we have planned for in terms of public infrastructure. We want to make sure that, number one, we're tracking the trends. Since the recession, there has been a lot more multifamily being built, filling a need that was missing, especially in the city of Reno. That's great. I hope it persists, and we're going to use that tracking of recent development in order to do what I was talking about earlier, which is provide a spatial disaggregation of the forecast to the landscape. And then that's going to inform how we spend our dollars. It's going to help to inform how we spend our dollars. Part of it also will be, because there's another side to this, we will estimate the future 20 years. We're not going to get it right. We don't have a crystal ball. We're going to do our best. And we're going to continue to check in on that. But we're also looking to do a build-out analysis. So everything that is on the books, we've been tracking that. We know about all of these units. We're going to build them all out. And that also is going to be run through the system to anticipate those stresses we might see. So to your question about finding number 3, do you have to make them all? I think there has to be, whenever possible, our regional plan promotes infill. And so if we could make the case, I think that we could accommodate all of our future needs with projects inside the McCarran Ring, that would be amazing. But we can't make that case. That does not seem to be feasible unless there's very significant changes in how we approach building. There was a UNR student who was doing sort of imagining he could accommodate 50,000 housing units in 7 towers, right? So in that case, possibly. But the point is that as we understand it, it has to be a balance. We have to give and take. We get as much infill as we possibly can. But in order to make the finding of jobs, housing balance, it does not have to be infill. It would not be possible.
Okay, so I think you've answered my question. And again, lawyers, I suppose, are trained to ask questions in a way to obtain an answer, right? And so it's not a trick question. It's just that when I look at what has to be provided in order to allow for us to have met the findings, for lack of a better word, or to find conformance, I try to very closely stick to that rather than say, well, I have a broad policy vision for all of Northern Nevada and I want to enforce that policy vision on others. I don't think that's my role as an elected. I look at the project on a project by project basis and I ask whether it meets those specific things. And here, I'm certainly informed by what was a technical denial, but an actual 5-4 decision of the Regional Planning Commission. I'm informed by my colleagues who sit on the Washoe County Commission, because they obviously have seen this project much more than I have. And so I look at those things and then I start to go through the findings of conformance. And so those are the things that are persuasive to me. And so in terms of what we have seen today, there are certainly elements that check those boxes. But when we start talking about, a broader look at the way this region will look in 20 years, we have an obligation to do that with regard to the project in front of us, as opposed to what I think sometimes happens, which is bootstrapping the entirety of every development project that some do or do not like into one decision. And so that's why I was asking about the particular one as to compatibility with the plan goals. Yes, we all agree that infill is a easier and is less carbon footprint challenging than other developments, but this particular project also is addressing a specific need for both housing and job housing balance, which is why I don't think it's easy for any of my colleagues or any of the public to check out on that infill question. And so I just want to, sort of say what I wanted to about infill. I think my colleague from Sparks, Mr. Lawson, also is accurate about wanting assurances, and certainly this project will outlive all of us in likelihood, just in the way it is being drafted. And so I am sort of advised by Washoe County's thoughts about this, which is about the way in which it's phased in over time, and that 150 houses being built, and the no construction will begin until required infrastructure and facilities are available. That also is the backstop for me about those concerns. And so no one has laid the contract in front of me to read it. I'm not sure that they do that very often in any of our development projects, but I make an assumption that those things, especially as to the facility plan, are part of the ongoing discussion. I appreciate Mr. Gordon's comments about being willing to add conditions. I just am not sure that that's what I particularly lean towards, which is like telling them what color the paint on the house should be in this body. Not that I'm suggesting that anyone is micromanaging in that way, but simply that we have a project and we have conditions. Those conditions have to be carried out, and I make an assumption that many of those will come back to the county commission at various stages as maps are happening and those kind of things. So again, I'm continuing. I would like to hear from the public because and the public comments, because those often inform my votes, and ultimately there are hard decisions to be made and I want to be able to make them. But those are just some of the things that I observed from the conversation that we've had on the dais so far.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burpigler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think also it's important to point out the fact that although infill is extremely important, and comments about the importance of infill are certainly in our new master plan as well as our previous master plan, but nothing in there rules out the importance of job housing compatibility. And that's, I think, what this project is. True, it's not infill in the sense of infill, although frankly, it's not that far out anymore. It's Stead's pretty close in nowadays. I used to think Stead was a long way out when I was a kid, but it's not now. And so it's not really not infill, but it's not really infill, but it's definitely lifestyle and housing job compatibility. And so that's how I looked at this when I looked at it. I didn't ask a planner to explain it to me. I asked a lawyer, and a lawyer, believe it or not, gave me less of a lengthy discussion and decision on it. So I was very comfortable with the opinion, but just so that you know, Devin, that's really, when I went to our district attorney, I said, explain to me exactly what this means. And that's really the emphasis he gave, is that as we grow, we can't rule out infill, the importance of infill. We do need to make sure we're doing that. And we also don't need to sprawl out into the top half of Red Rock Canyon. So there's a balance there somewhere. This project is that type of balance. So.
Commissioner Breckus?
I mean, I think that you have to take it a little deeper and realize that in the sequential discussion, if it's not infill itself, is it detracting from our efforts of infill? And I would argue if there's areas and projects that are closer in that can fit that more near-term demand need, then this one that I'm seeing a big nut. I'm seeing plans to be made in this, and because I sit at Reno, I know a big nut's coming on the sewer plant. And that, because it takes up resources, is going to detract from infill. So I think you got to kind of tickle that concept a little bit further. Well, you and I both represent Keystone Avenue, where the bridge is, and that bridge is falling. And that bridge is falling because this Red Rock Road and Lemon Valley are going ahead of it. So how do we tell our people? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Councilman Delgado.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be quick. I think a lot of my colleagues have expressed a lot of the questions that I've had, but just want to generally add to the discussion. I think, again, having this information before me a few days ago and today, I've been able to see it through and really appreciate the developers' views in terms of codifying and memorializing a lot of the, backstopping a lot of the issues that were at the forefront here, I believe, of a few months ago. And I think the county commission has done a good job of also weeding through. From checking off transportation, fire, police, water, storm. I mean, these are things that are growing pains of a growing community. And I think this is at the, really respectfully in terms of the developer as a strong experienced community member sees it forward. One of the big pieces to me also is just, this is an opportunity for a middle class community to have home ownership. You can't speak that much more to what that means, especially in this community. An opportunity to live in an extraordinary community. I mean, that's out of reach for so many thousands of families in our community. Now to see somebody that has that experience, is committed to our community, to have that opportunity within the reach, speaks to the volume in terms of what we're trying to make happen here regionally. So I can't speak more to that than to say that what an opportunity for our community to see that happen. In addition to that, also just all the checks and balances. It doesn't look like this was rammed through in any type of way. It was deeply considered, a lot of details involved. And the community is here also in terms of recognizing that this isn't a fly-by-night developer. And so thank you to all the hard work. Thank you to the commission. Thank you to all those that brought it forward today. I think it's an extraordinary opportunity for thousands of families and members to come, and something that we could all learn from, especially as we start to see some of these tough concepts and tough developments come before the city of Reno. I know that for sure. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Delgado. Commissioner Hartung?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be brief as well. I'd just like to remind my colleagues that Washoe County does not have places like Park Lane Mall to do infill. We just don't have that. And so, and by the way, that developer had to do a huge stretch to make Park Lane work, and if memory serves me correctly, Washoe County is actually sewering that. That's going to Stem Wharf, and so we're taking that capacity. With respect to projects that haven't happened because other things are happening in the outskirts, that's just plain not so. Look at what we're doing on the Virginia Street project right now, and the some $40 million that we're spending on Virginia Street, and the Fourth and Prater project. So I would respectfully disagree with my colleague and say that that's just not so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Breckus?
couldn't let that go because you do have Park Lane, because Park Lane is in Washoe County. And that is a touch that we haven't really gone into. And the regional plan didn't get to as far, but when you add unincorporated growth, you add constituent demands to the county government to provide those direct services of the sheriff, of the road budget, of the water lines, and you don't have the municipal tax. So you're also putting a higher cost burden on the county than that which would be if this development came in the city. And that's always been a content of the regional plan. So I always feel, in due respect, I need to say, when I hear something that sounds Washoe County being like the third city, you're not the third city. You're the county with a different tax structure. And if we were talking about this being in incorporated Reno or incorporated Sparks, we might have the infrastructure there and it might not be as hard a nut to take.
Commissioner Weber, did you still?
I just wanted to say ditto to our Mr. Delgado, our Commissioner Delgado. Absolutely, this developer is doing an A1 project, or would like to, with the help of our support. But I've lived in the North Valleys out here for 37 years, as I've said before last night at our city council meeting. And I had the opportunity to represent the North Valleys for 12 years. And I know that in all those years that I lived there, I moved to Stead Boulevard from Lake Tahoe. And when I moved to Stead Boulevard, you went through Reno, and it seemed like it was forever. There was dirt roads, 395 wasn't there. I'm sorry, but you know what? We have a project here that meets everything that we need in this community. We need the housing. We need this project because of all the cool things that are going to happen there, and it won't happen tomorrow. I just think we need to support this, and I'm sorry I'm not going into detail, and I'm probably in the weeds, but I just want to say this is a great project for this community, for housing, and for all of us. And we need to, I support this developer probably more than any other developer because they say, what they say, they do. And they come forward and they do more in this community and in the city of Reno and in Washoe County and in Sparks or in Sun Valley as anyone. So I just want to say this is a great project, and I'm sorry I'm in the weeds.
Any other discussion? I'm going to open up for public comment. If not, so open up for public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Yes, Russ Earl, and after that will be Lindsay Lai.
Good afternoon again, Russ Earl, Silver Knolls Community Organization. First of all, I gave you all a four-sided sheet making you aware of the lawsuit against the county and the developer that was filed on December 11th after the county commissioner's decision, and they didn't look at any findings at all. That's just for that. Some other discrepancies, things they did not really touch on, they barely. Emergency ingress, egress. We have one way in, one way out. So let's add another 19,000 vehicle trips per day and another 2,000 people with no way to get anybody in and out of there. Obviously, most of you weren't there 2 years ago when we had our massive fire and we were stuck in Silver Knolls. We had no way out. We were cut off north and south. So let's add more to that. Compromises. Well, we started at 680 dwellings, then the developer went to 2340, and then to 1640, and now we're at 1842, so not really a compromise. Compatibility, no. Currently, we have one house for every 2.67 acres, not up to 11 homes per acre, which they're having on this. Obviously, you probably didn't see Channel 4's news on Tuesday and Wednesday that talked about how sprawl development like this is the worst type of expansion you can have due to added costs to the taxpayers and services that need to be rendered. You say that we have police protection, but yet we had a letter from the sheriff, I think it was 2 commissioners meetings ago, that specifically said that he could not support, he did not have the manpower and could not support a development like this. Nobody brought that up today. But we did have a chief of the fire that said that the ordinances would be no problem. But yet we haven't been able to get this developer to cut a fire break around his property for years. It's been reported, and the fire marshal has not made them do that. So what's going to make it any better? The fire chief did say the fire break made up of the homes. Well, we're going to have high density, and I'm sure they thought the same thing in Coffee Park in Santa Rosa right before they burnt 5,500 homes to the ground. And with this logic, we might as well just build to the Oregon border so that we don't have anything that can burn. As far as other infrastructure, we have the bottleneck that we're going to create on 395 from Stead Boulevard to Red Rock. You said that we have to have a level of service. That's a county document. I don't know that it pertains to a state highway. So what's to make the state expand that? The county's not going to pay for it. You can't make the state do it. We need to live with it. We already have days where it takes over an hour to get into Reno from Red Rock, and that's not even when it's snowing. That's just because we have an accident. You're going to make life untenable for the people out there. I don't know why I think it's going to be a beautiful development the way it's planned. It's just not the right density and the right number of homes.
We're sorry. Your conference is ending now. Please hang up.
So at that point, it's going to make it, people aren't going to want to live out there really because it's going to be too hard to get to your jobs. Thank you. Oh, and I guess I just wanted to point out one member up here got a $5,000 contribution from the developer, and it was their biggest contribution of the year.
Next up, we have Lindsay Lai, and then after that is Lou Christensen.
My name is Lindsay Lai, and I humbly request that you approve the Silver Hills project. Today, the median home price for a home here is almost $400,000, while in Las Vegas, the median home costs around $284,000. That's almost a $116,000 difference. In 2018, I sold a single-family detached home built in 2006 for $225,000. Within a year, I purchased a townhome for $290,000 here in the Northwest Reno area. Both properties had 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and a 2-car garage. How can it be that a townhome in Reno costs $65,000 more than a single-family detached home in Las Vegas? The RGJ published an article last year calling Washoe County one of the most unaffordable places to live. Moreover, the news outlet said that a person must earn approximately $80,000 to afford a median home in this area. The estimated average median household income in Reno is approximately $52,000, which is well below the income needed to become a homeowner. Commissioners, please support affordable housing in an increase in density. Building large homes and encouraging urban sprawl is taxing on our environment because it uses more raw materials for construction. It costs more in public infrastructure and uses more precious resources like land and water. According to HousingWire.com, the median age for a U.S. homebuyer is now 47 years old, meaning that your constituents are renting for longer. More importantly, homeowners invest in their home's curb appeal, while renters and investors tend to disregard maintenance issues, leading to dilapidated homes and neighborhoods in your districts. We need to create more entry-level housing types, like townhomes and condos, so that my generation can purchase homes of our own and quit renting, which transfers money from the middle class to investors who can afford to purchase 200-unit apartment complexes. Please support new affordable housing developments like Silver Hills, so that your constituents can afford to purchase homes that don't overburden their budgets. Thank you very much.
Next up is Lou Christensen, and after that is Betty Schmidt.
Good afternoon. My name is Lou Christensen. I'm a longtime resident of Silver Knolls. I'm here today to request that you do not permit the Lifestyle Homes request to amend the master plan for this development. The plan presented today is speculative and very contingent. Many times over the past couple of years, as this project has been debated, the idea that growth and development are inevitable has been stated. Growth and development may be inevitable, but inappropriate growth does not have to be. By rejecting this proposal, you take a step in the direction of smarter growth. Silver Hills is not smart because it is the worst kind of development. If I ask any of you, what sprawl is, your answer would likely at least partly describe this project. Silver Hills, as presented here, is a plan to fit as many dwelling units as possible onto land which is not built up in any way and has no supporting infrastructure even close. To try and sell the project, the developer asserts the project will provide residences for the missing middle. The only middle about this project is that it's in the middle of nowhere. The nearest retail is a mere Quickie Mart more than 2 miles away. If we're really concerned about the missing middle, we would support development in the middle of where people want to be, infill. This project sits in the northwest corner of Lemon Valley, a closed basin with its own watershed and airshed. Think flooding and inversions. The type of development being proposed will add to these problems more than the development which is already permitted. The developer declares there's an engineering solution for the flood problem. Maybe, maybe not. Spanish Springs still has issues managing stormwater runoff in developed residential areas. The city of Reno is waiting to hear what damage from Swan Lake flooding will cost them. I bet the developers of properties associated with these problems thought they had plans to deal with them. As you sit here today looking out for the interest and welfare of existing residents, you will also be shaping the future. Hopefully as a future like the one envisioned a decade or so ago, when an agreement was reached with the same developer over how the property should be built out. The mutually agreed upon plan still exists today. The current character description of Silver Knolls far better describes the site in question than the proposed character description. Writing something on paper does not change the facts on the ground. In this instance, the facts as they currently exist are far better than what they will be if this project is approved. Lifestyle Homes has a project in hand which will let them develop this property. Reject these requested amendments so that the smartest path forward is taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Betty Schmidt, and then after that will be Ramey Pratt.
Hello. My name's Betty Schmidt. I've lived in Silver Knolls for over 30 years, and I'm nowhere in contest to these great spokesmen, but I'll put my little 2 bits forward. First of all, we made an agreement with them years ago, the listeners, and they gave their word as they have today. Subject to coming back before you if things don't work out the way they promise. And of course, they're back before you. They have many, many supporters here, workers, et cetera. And their mantra is build a community. We have a community. We're not, we're probably individualistic. We have our own, there's some people with animals, there's some people with natural growth, there's some people that have really fixed up their property. That's fine. We respect each other. And also we're self-contained. We have our own wells and our own septic. Nothing goes back. Here they're talking about having sewer ponds in case there's more effluent than what they hope. That's going to smell lovely in winter. But nevertheless, I respect this process. I think you're all great. You're doing the best you can in what you believe, and that's what our democracy hopefully is really based on. So I thank you all, and have a good day. But I do request you deny their appeal of the work of your county employees that have researched this project and have continued with the zoning that we have now. Thank you. Bye.
Next up, we have Ramey Pratt, and then after that will be Leon Hayes.
Good afternoon. Couple of things. Answer the question, I know that Mr. Gordon was asked earlier where we could look to find any of the stuff that was being promised to us. Well, 3 little letters, PUD. I'm not a lawyer, never played one on TV, have a cousin who did, I'm just a lowly insurance agent. However, I did learn how to read. And in PUDs, none of the stuff that they have on their self-imposed mitigation is listed, not a single bit of it, not one word. But what is listed is the line that Mr. Gordon is most likely going to pull out of his pocket when push comes to shove, and it's the one that says, in the event of a dispute, PUDs will take precedent. That's there. Let's get back to why I really came. We have an issue out on Red Rock Road. The staff kind of brushed over it a little bit, but on page 7 of their report to you, start about the second line. Red Rock Road runs between the amendment site and is the main arterial serving the project, and thus will bear the majority of the traffic impacts. The road is the only way in and out of the project area, as Mr. Earl described, which could have ramifications for public safety. As elected officials, I don't know if anybody bothered to tell you guys, you are all charged with defending the public safety. Paradise, the campfire. Chief Pimlott from CAL FIRE came out, went through Red Rock Road, determined there was a couple of differences between Red Rock Road and the campfire. One was the type of fuel. They have conifer pines, we have junipers. The other one, they were actually working on mitigating and getting people out. They lost 86 people in the fire. Yesterday, they came out with a new report. They lost another 50 tied to the fire, and they're still counting. Which one of you wants to write the check to that family? Think about that. Let's talk about law enforcement response. We have one deputy that covers Golden Valley, Lemon Valley, Stead, the Red Rock Road corridor, and Cold Springs. His backup is going to come from one of 3 places. Sun Valley, if one of the 2 deputies over there aren't tied up, Parr Boulevard, or the next available. We're looking 30 to 45-minute minimum response time for his backup to get there. That's not safe for our deputies. It just plain is not. Some crackhead's coming through your door in the middle of the night. How long are you willing to wait for somebody to respond to help you? Just need to think about that. Thank you.
Next up, Leon Hayes, and after that will be Aaron West.
Hello, my name is Leon Hayes. I'm actually here for a couple reasons. I actually work for Lifestyle Homes. I'm one of the superintendents. And I'm a veteran and a recent homeowner. I just closed on my house last Friday. As a single man, there's no way I'm going to afford a house anywhere else on the money that I make. I make decent money. I got a great job working with the listeners. There's no doubt about that. But for a single man to qualify for a home, I think speaks volumes in itself. We built a great home. As a superintendent, when I first started for Lifestyle, we kind of got brought up a while ago about some of the warranty things. We got a phone call. I'd been with the company about a year, a guy out in Sun Valley, well out of warranty, had a crack in his ceiling. Peter asked me, can you go out and take a look at this crack? So I got in my van, I drove out to Sun Valley, I called Peter, told him, yeah, it's cracked all the way across. Peter says, well, can you fix it? I said, yeah, I can fix it. So we fixed it. He never charged the homeowner. The guy was out of warranty 12 years probably, and Peter just fixed it. That's what we do. That's what I see every day when I'm out there. I walk the homes with the homeowners when they buy them. I know what we do in a house. And construction, 35 years, I have never worked for a better builder. I've been with a lot of concrete, roofing, all kinds of stuff. And I've never had a better job or somebody who believes the way I do and how houses should be done, how we turn them over to people. We all just want to keep on going. We feel we're going to build a better house than anybody else that steps in there, and we're confident about that. Our community plan is obviously, Wendy Baroli has done a great job planning this whole thing out. We're all excited about it, and we're just kind of want to get it going. I just thank you for your time.
Next up is Aaron West and then Gina St. Orez.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. For the record, Aaron West, CEO of the Nevada Builders Alliance. I have celebrated with all of you as we've seen the economic growth in our community and specifically in North Valleys, where we've seen zone changes to facilitate millions of square feet of commercial and industrial space, which have created thousands of jobs in those areas. And the challenge becomes, where are those folks living? The conversation about infill is interesting to me because if you were to take these 2,000 units and put them inside the McCarran Ring and expect these folks who are working out in the North Valleys to then commute within the McCarran Ring to get to that infill property, you would exacerbate the traffic situation by tenfold. So the idea is you're bringing planned, smart growth into an area that is desperately needed, where the jobs exist, and we can actually reduce some of our reliance on the transportation systems over there. And as they head towards the spaghetti bowl, which are woefully inadequate. The other thing I would say is to process. We hear a lot of just hysteria about how quickly this is going to happen and how we're not going to be able to keep up with what's going on. As you've heard, it's taken 2.5 years to get to a point where we can talk about a zone change. This is the first step. We still have to go through multiple tentative maps, final maps, infrastructure improvement plan development and approval. So it's there's a lot in the queue. But there's plenty of time to work through some of these things. And your own public works managers would tell you that you don't want to shut off growth at this particular time because they actually need the money from the impact fees from these projects in order to pay for the necessary improvements. So I think I stand up here as not only a friend but a fan of the Listener family, and I've known them for a long time, and their decades of track record speaks for itself. The idea that we do need an affordable product. It was mentioned earlier that there's already approved projects out there. Well, if you look at the development timeline, it's pretty easy to see where we're at. You start with a landowner who typically has to sell the property to a developer who then takes that through the entitlement process and then puts a price tag on it, which then sells it. Typically they market it to a publicly traded home builder, right? So they're trying to maximize that value, but it's all adding cost along the way. Then you get to that publicly traded home builder who then subs everything out, and all along the way it's driving up those costs, and that's how we get in a position where our median is over $400,000. The true benefit of this family is they own the property, they develop the property, they take all that risk and develop the property, they build the product, and they even self-perform on a lot of the subs, on a lot of the trades. So once again, thank you for your time.
Next up, we have Gina St. Iris, and then after that is Kim Riley.
Thank you, council members, for hearing me. My name is Gina St. Iris, and I have been a resident of Reno for 28 years. And I wanted to address the impacts that are going on with our community presently. I understand there's a balancing for need for affordable housing from everybody, from the boomers, the missing middle, millennials, everyone. But we also want to discuss infrastructure. From what I understand, I've read some statistics about the U.S. Census Bureau said in April 2010, Reno's population was just over 220,000. And in July 2019, Reno grew to about 250,000, which is about 25,000 or 2,500 people. Now, I know there's other people living in homes together with families. So then I found out that according to the September 2019 City Manager's Office reports on residential units and building permit status, there are a total of 5,074 single-family units with over 5,095 multifamily units. So 10,000 units are going up. And 1,410 of the single family are up in the North Valleys, and 712 of the multi are in the North Valleys. So this is my biggest concern. I met this woman. She and I have been doing business. She's an insurance broker for some time. She's 68 years old, and she lives in Lemon Valley. She says that she just works to keep insurance for her life and for food on the table. In less than a year, her commute has gone from 15 minutes to about 45 just to get on the freeway. And this, they talk about paving some of the off-roads like Lemon Valley, but she says that's just a jump in the fire and jump out of the frying pan into the fire scenario, because basically it's even more crowded. So we're gonna put, in just the next few months, almost 40, you think about it, 2,122 more residences just in the North Valleys. You multiply that by the average of 2 cars, and that's another 4,000 vehicles. And we're already slam packed. And you're gonna tell millennials and boomers that on the average, their daily commute could be up to 90 minutes with everything getting as bad as it is? I mean, who's gonna wanna raise a family if it's gonna take them 2 hours to go to school? And, you know, we really respect the zoning there. I love it out there, and we don't look down on anybody, and someone telling us that we are, you know, upset and indifferent is wrong. We want to respect nature and keep it beautiful out there by keeping the zoning as it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, I have Kim Riley, and then after that is Marcielle Riley.
Hello, my name is Kim Jardine Riley, and I live in Silver Knolls. And on January 30th, we had 17 years out there. Joined this fight 17 years ago over rezoning. So these guys, Mr. Gordon and Rayleigh, that say that they've been working on it for 2.5 years, well, I've been working on it for 17, and it's been going on for a lot longer than that. We bought for a rural lifestyle. We bought for a place that's quiet. My neighbors couldn't come because they all work during the day. They couldn't come to a 2 o'clock meeting. But out there, no one's really moved. Everybody's stuck around. I know my neighbors. I know who's new, if anyone is new, and anything that does change is usually because there's been a death in the family. I know who the sex offender is in my community, but I don't know who the 25 are that are in Cold Springs. I also feel like it's sometimes these councils aren't very transparent when they don't maybe let us know that they've accepted donations from the builders, from the real estate agents, from all these different entities that they're voting for. Several up here voted yes last time, and they all received contributions. The only one that just voted no had not received any contributions. I live in an area that I love. It's outside of Reno. We moved there for this reason. We're not against the 680 houses. We're not against orchards. We're not against the things that they're offering. We just don't want the density. We know the traffic, the water, the issues. There's no wildlife quarters. There's nothing talked about geothermal. Well, once in a while, solar's dropped in because they have to talk about it. But where are all the renewable things that we do in Nevada? Nevada's not a state that we grow trees in. Nevada's a desert. And it's nice to have trees and orchards, but it's nice to have water too. And we've been fighting this fight. It's like, where were you guys 17 years ago? Where were you, Mr. Ramsey, 17 years ago? Where were you? We fight for things we care about. This is something that's important to us. This is something that we care about. That's why I come to these meetings. That's why I show up. That's why I care. It's civil democracy at its best, but developers have got to listen to what the community really wants. They come up with the shiny objects and make you think, oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. BS. You know it's BS. A lot of this isn't gonna happen. So please just go with the 680 homes that we've been fighting over for, it's probably been going on a lot longer than I've been there, but please listen to the community. We are the community. We care about the community. It's important to us. We're not against any kind of growth. We're just against the bullshit that's going on right now.
Thank you.
Next up, I have Marcielle Riley, and then after that is Stacy Hernandez.
Hello, for the record, my name is Marshall Riley. I'm a resident of Silver Knolls and North Valleys. Unlike most of the people in support of this change who are not residents of the North Valleys, and some of which are not even residents of the Washoe County or the state of Nevada. I don't have the luxury of having a paid day off to be here today. I don't have thousands of dollars to donate to political campaigns. What I do have is an American dream, and it's not a selfish one. I bought a home with my wife, paid for it through hard work and savings, and we chose the area we wanted to live in very thoughtfully. I have a promise also from the Washoe County in the form of a county master zoning plan. Like my neighbors, of course, many of them can't be here today because of the time of this meeting, we all bought property in Silver Knolls because it was zoned low density. Every landowner, with the exception of one, that is, this one absentee landowner asks you now to set aside your service to the current residents of Silver Knolls and in the North Valleys, the well-considered advice of the Washoe County Planning Commission to set aside the very notion of smart growth. They ask you to ignore your oath of office to serve the public and instead change the existing laws for the sole benefit of a real estate developer. They ask you to pervert the very intent of the master zoning plan, to allow spot zoning and sprawl with a we'll figure it out later attitude for traffic, police, fire, sewer, and water. I've never been against growth or afraid of it. What I am against is the manipulation of the system. I'm against the notion that laws can be changed not for the good of the people or for common sense, but changed to maximize profit for a single business. Changed in favor of the fluff in spite of the facts. It's not the future I fear, it's the present. The decisions today will open a Pandora's box of sprawl across the county, since rules and laws could easily be changed to benefit those individuals who profit most and disregard the overall costs and impacts to taxpayers. There's a reason this development has been denied by every non-political entity that has reviewed it. The facts don't match the fiction. I urge you to fully consider the facts and deny this application.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Stacy Hernandez and then Adrian Tessa.
Hello, Councilman, Council. I'm Stacy Hernandez. I'm here today in support of Silver Hills. I would just like to say that after listening to everything and everybody this afternoon, I think it comes down to the fact that we're really talking about our community and what direction we want it to take. And I think it's important that this is a community that they are building, and it's not just a housing project. And they put a lot of thought into what would be most beneficial to the current community, to incoming people to the area, and to our children and, you know, our aging parents who want to downsize. I think there's a lot of levels in this community that make it very strong and could be a good example of what can be done in the future in other parts of our city. Quite frankly, we're growing and there's no way to stop it. It's happening and we just have to do it, you know, quite frankly, safe for everybody and do it well. And I think that they've done a very good job of proving that they've got, you know, fire and health. They're putting in, you know, all these improvements that I know that other developers have not had to do or are going to do, because they feel it is important. Their own children live in there. My own children live in that community. We want it to be a good place for all of them. And I just think it's important to take a look at what growth we're going to do and how we can best do it. So I hope that you will support the community.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Adrian Testa and then Cody Kay.
Hello, my name is Adrian Testa. I grew up here in Reno, Nevada. I went to Roy Gom, then Swope, Reno High School, UNR. And like a typical millennial, I was a little late doing everything. Me and my wife got married in 2018, and we started looking for a house in 2019. Well, our home shopping experience was pretty disheartening. We're pretty well-to-do. I mean, we make about 80, 90 grand combined. Our FICO score is like right around 750. We had $20,000 to put down on a house, and all we qualified for was an FHA loan. And after talking to the lender, our monthly payment was going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,000 to $2,200, which is almost a 70% increase over the $1,300 we pay for rent right now. So my experience showed me that there's a massive shortage of available affordable housing for the working middle class. I'm a contractor, my wife's a massage therapist, and we really want to be homeowners because home ownership is the most powerful driver of wealth creation. Back in 2015, the Federal Reserve released an interesting statistic that showed that the average wealth of a homeowner is $200,000 and a renter is only $5 grand. So, we work all the time for our paychecks, and that funds our daily expenses, but wealth is what creates long-term financial security. So there's a huge issue, as everyone's been saying here today, about affordable housing. And it's really, really critical for a whole new generation of would-be home buyers to be able to get affordable homes. So in my opinion, any company that provides this economic necessity should be encouraged to conduct its business in a well-thought-out manner and should be encouraged by the government. So that's all I have to say, and thank you for your time.
Next up, it's Cody Kay, and then after that is Don Tatro.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you again for taking the time to go over this much anticipated project. My name is Cody Kay. I'm an electrical contractor. Rocket Electric is my company, and I work for both Peter and Bob Listener. Unfortunately, I did not get the day paid off today. I didn't actually get the day off at all. I worked this morning on some of their projects. Wanted to come down and show my support for this project. I think a couple people have touched on how much planning has gone into this and how far away we are from actually getting to get the shovels in the ground, get the first house built. A lot of people have talked about safety. We had an insurance agent talk about some of the problems of the Paradise Fire that was in relation to the Red Rock Road. The Truckee Meadows fire chief mentioned how nice it would be to have fire hydrants on Red Rock Road. The only way to do that is by actually developing the property. I think that the biggest thing is, we did smart planning. We've heard a lot of good things. I think Peter and his family have spent a lot of time trying to make sure that we get all the steps of the current homeowners and any future homeowners, so that way everybody can work together through the agri-hood or any of the community. So I ask that you guys build a bridge, meet Peter and his family and his company halfway, and make this project happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Don Tatro, and then after that will be Art Moreno.
Hi, thank you. Don Tatro with the Builders Association of Northern Nevada. Up here to support this project. I think it's great. The listeners, obviously, you've heard what great builders they are before and after the sale, and all they've done to the community, so I won't spend time on that. But the interesting thing I keep hearing is, I get it. We all want to be the last house on the block. I'd love that. They're turning dirt in a pasture right next to mine. I didn't go buy that lot. I wish I could have, but I couldn't. But the reality is somebody else wants to live in the same area I thought was good for my family. So, in planning utopia, when we don't have to worry about time, money, or reality, we could say we're going to shove 50,000 units into Ward 1. We could say we're going to make everyone take the bus. We could say you're going to trip over the strollers and the puppies and you're going to live this lifestyle I'm not willing to live. Because in the reality of it, we're all going to leave here, get in our car, and drive to our single-family homes. So when we talk about these things and the American dream and attainability, we can't have it both ways. Attainable housing is what the listeners are trying to do. Attainable housing is a conversation we're all having at every meeting we go to. I know it's a conversation, it's in the paper every day. And so without attainable housing, you're crushing the American dream, you're forcing people to live a life we're not willing to live. So I just want to, again, support the listeners in what they're doing. It's taken them 2.5 years to get here, 30 months to get here. They're not even close to being done. We have a 3-year lot supply sitting out there for finished lots. So if we're taking 2.5 to 3 years to get to a maybe, we're going to run out of opportunity to capitalize on our economic opportunities. So thank you again, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Next we have Art Moreno, and then after that is Wendy Baroli.
Hello, my name is Art Moreno. 32 years ago, I met my wife. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary 3 days ago. 2 months after we dated, we moved in together. So we went guns a-blazing. If you want to know the definition of throwing money away, it's called rent. We struggled saving money, paying rent, and you have to sign a 6-month lease, a 9-month lease, and it's hard to save money. Then I heard this developer, Lifestyle Homes. And I wasn't going there to buy a house because we thought we weren't going to be able to achieve that dream. I was going there to get a job. I got a job there. 2 years later, we were buying our first house, affordable housing. And everybody deserves the American dream. And I'm proof that the American dream is obtainable. I totally support this project. Now I have my own company. I'm an HVAC contractor, and I do the work for Lifestyle Homes. And it supports my family, and it supports the family of the people that work for me. They build a beautiful house, and we do an excellent job in that heating system. They'll tell you. So I support this project 100%, and I hope you guys will support it too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Wendy Baroli, and then after that is Peter Lissner.
Commissioners, Wendy Baroli for Lifestyle Homes. I'm guilty, you're right. I live across the state line. Literally, I am the state line. That is why I'm out there. I do live out there. I commute out there. My partner commutes. My sister commutes. We drive from the edge of Village Parkway all the way into town every day, back and forth. We are concerned about the same things that any other resident is out there. And I also am a Reno resident. I own a home in town. So what I'm here to say is that I care about our North Valley kids. That's really why I'm here. I care about the human factor of this. I know there's all these other issues, but we have children in the North Valleys that are often coming home without family members at home, who are often left to their own devices. We know that we have all kinds of juvenile issues. You can look on any North Valley's Facebook page at what's going on with juvenile kind of joyrides, stealing cars, graffiti, things like that. The way you change that is you create a community. You don't just create 1 acre properties where people are individuals, you create communities, and that's what's happening. As people move out, they can either live in apartments with nothing to do, or they can create a community environment in which we can give them something to do, to give them purpose. And we're talking about a long-term vision that I hope that this region, I grew up here. I'm a 530, and my family had a ranch on Lakeside Drive, and I watched Lakeside Drive turn into Lewis Homes. And I always thought to myself, why didn't Grandpa do a better job? Because that really didn't ever create a community. You can go over to Lewis Homes off of Lakeside Drive and get lost for a day trying to find someone on an address over there. And so that to me is more sprawl than a planned community in which you design how people move in and out of that community. And I guess truly the idea of an agri-hood for our state could change how other developers use our outlying areas, because we are going to have that urban-rural interface, and we are going to need to do something that's different than what we've done in the past. And what in the past, we build houses and we put people in there and then we hope we figure it out. These guys have thought about this process. How can we integrate a lifestyle that all of these residents are talking about that they love with the need for also affordable housing? And I think this does both of those things.
Thank you.
Next up, I have Peter Lissner, and after that is Patricia Mays.
Mr. Chairman, can't see you with these on and can't see this with them off. And commissioners, thank you, appreciate the time. I know that growth and development is a hot topic, and I understand you guys all are taking a lot of heat all the time for this, and just want to thank you for your support and the job that you do for all of us. I know that it's thankless and brutal sometimes. So anyway, I'm going to read because I'm kind of nervous today. It's a big day for us. I believe we just said that I think we bought the property about 23 years ago. I'd have to ask my dad, but he's getting old and can't hear me. Anyway, for me, it's about passion and gratitude. And it kind of sounds funny from a nail pounder. It's about love. So let me explain. I love my job. I've loved that I'm able to create not just a house, but a home and community for so many families, giving them the opportunity to realize their dream of home ownership. So for for the amount of time we've been in business, which is about 32 years, we've built just over 3,000 houses. That's the same amount of houses that Lennar builds, I think it's Lennar or one of the other large ones, in 2 weeks. So 30 years, 3,000 houses. I love that I'm able to I'm passionate about the people I work with and making sure that we have a great place for them to call home for decades to come. I'm talking about decades. I'm passionate about building the best home in town and knowing we can all be proud of the product and community we create. And I'm grateful to be part of a family-owned business that takes pride in what we do, the people we work with, and our lifetime customers. I'm grateful to have a son, right back here, Dustin. Right there, good-looking one. I'm grateful to have a son that is currently working with me and showing signs of following in my footsteps and my dad's as well. Continuing a family business where our customers aren't a number and we're always available to them no matter what. And I have a beautiful daughter back here that still makes me feel like I'm number one. And I'm grateful for all of the supporters here that didn't get paid today, that showed up here during the middle of a workday. Thank you all very, very much. You really are truly the best. All that said, I'm not callous and oblivious to the fact that growth, including our project, is going to have a negative impact on some of the people and obviously traffic. None of us want new houses or commercial buildings built around us. We all feel this way. This is something we all have in common, yet growth and folks that want to live in the building are coming, and they're already here. So the question is, wouldn't you rather have us, a local family dedicated to this community for over 30 years, rather than the alternative? We are committed to building a fantastic new community that will be cutting edge and appeal to all generations, At every meeting, I reiterate that I'm happy and willing to meet with anyone who has a positive and constructive ideas to incorporate into this project. We'd love to hear from you. My phone number, as always, is 813-0046. Call and help be part of this planning process. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Patricia Maves and then Megan Murray.
I've been a resident of North Valleys for 37 years, and I've watched it grow and grow and grow. And I believe that all the growth can be good, but I think also that this could be the greatest project ever. But we also have to consider what is already on the books and what is already being built and how that is going to affect our infrastructure and sewers and roads and getting to work. If we have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to be at work by 7, how is that going to work? And as this project has gone through its permutations of having to keep coming back with changes, and the number of houses keeps going up and up and up, and now we're, at 1,800 houses in the same amount of space. I think that needs to be looked at. I'm also concerned about the fact that there are people moving to the area, Washoe County, who want to be able to purchase larger plots of land and begin ranches, horse ranches, cattle ranches. And are we looking out to save space for those people? And there's one thing that I have not heard brought up is the fact is if this development is going to sustain the air race property in the area, or will down the road they be asking for them to be finding new places? And will it go by the wayside? Because it is a big economic advantage to the area. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Megan Murray, and then after that is Kim Petrie.
Thank you so much for hearing me today. I am a millennial. I'm from the North Valleys. Graduated from there in 2007, just right before the big plummet there. It was a super scary time when you're just getting on your feet and into the real world. Some setbacks happened, so went to college, met my husband, stayed in this area, and he was talking about buying a house. Problem was is we had student loans, so that took a little while. Once those started to get paid down, we started looking. At the time, it was about 3.5, 4 years ago. Because of my student loans, we weren't able to purchase at the time, had to pay those down a little bit to get a lower interest rate. Finally came the time to get those paid off, yay, and then the stress of actually buying a home. But I did work for lifestyle. I always knew I wanted to buy a lifestyle home. I'm more of on the permitting side, so I knew what kind of home we build. As you've heard earlier, I won't go into detail again, but I just knew how amazing our houses are. At the time, we weren't sure if we wanted to buy a resale in the area that was built by Lifestyle or a new home, but because of Lifestyle, we got into a new home. Like, we were really, really, really lucky to do that. Very appreciative, and it went smoothly, which is really, it's like the biggest purchase you'll ever make, and they just held our hands the whole time. It was amazing. But saying that, a lot of my friends are still paying student loans. They can't get into a home right now. I've had my best friend move to Oklahoma. Some of them went to Oregon for more job opportunity because they couldn't afford their $1,300 rent. We were in a one-bedroom apartment before we bought, and it was $1,350. A little too much, in my opinion, and I think it's because we're just not building fast enough and the demand is there. So my brother is looking right now, and he's not quite ready, but I hope when he is ready, he'll be able to live in an agri-hood, because that's what he wants to do, and hopefully we can hop over to the agri-hood as well. Anyway, I just really hope you support this project, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Kim Petrie. After that is Pandora Gulan.
Good evening. My name is Kim Petrie, and I've had the pleasure of helping the listener family since the early 2000s, offering financing to our people who desperately need homes. And he provides a product, a beautiful product that people can live in and sell years later and make money and buy a better house. And I'm going to tell you, out of all the builders, the people that move up in his community, the numbers are astounding. And talking to people every single day and qualifying them, I just can't tell you how bad and desperate we need this project. So thank you for listening today, and say yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have Pandora Gulan, and then after that would be Larry Stamps.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Pandora Gulan, and I'm here to encourage you to support the Lifestyle Homes Silver Hills project. I am the director of the Cold Springs Family Center, which is operated through the Lifestyle Homes Foundation. Lifestyle Homes, their owners and organization are responsible builders, but they not only build quality homes, but build communities. The Family Center in Cold Springs is a true representation of Lifestyle Homes' commitment to the communities in which they build. As a nonprofit center, the listeners volunteer their time and leadership to manage our operation. The team at Lifestyle helps us maintain our building and donate staff and contractor time to the center. We are surrounded by a community park, a middle school, and miles of walking trails. All of these are made possible by Lifestyle Homes. Our center is open to all of Cold Springs, not just the Woodland Village homeowners. The Lifestyle Homes looks beyond their own development to include the entire community. The Family Center is a diverse operation. We are a gym, we have cardio, we have fitness, we have group exercise classes, but we are very much more than that. Weekdays, you will see 50+ kids in the morning and afternoon attending our before and after school program. When the kids are out of school, we're there for them too, so parents can go to work knowing their kids are safe and having a good time. We are involved in community events such as the annual Easter egg hunt, which is coming up soon. The Halloween Monster Bash and Holiday Bazaar, the food bank, which today in our parking lot served over 75 families in our area They were able to get their food right there in their own community. Local HOAs, Neighborhood Watch, Weight Watchers, and a local church all conduct regular meetings and programs at our center. Birthday parties, graduation parties, baby showers, and more are celebrated by families here. Our basketball court is used regularly, especially by youth and teenagers. We want somewhere for them to be able to go. We offer opportunities for them to volunteer if they ever can't pay to come in the center. We offer child watch while parents work out and areas for youth to play together so families can come in together. Our seniors are probably one of the most dedicated groups of our members. The center provides them an opportunity to maintain their health with senior fitness classes, but by meeting up, they also have created their own community and support group. We provide volunteer opportunities so people can have a way to give back and take care of each other. Some help with maintenance, others volunteer with children in our Child Watch or after-school program, and many volunteer for our events. We'll have hundreds of people hopefully helping fill thousands of eggs very soon for that Easter egg hunt. Most importantly, on a daily basis, the center is a place for our community to come together. From infants to seniors, there is a place for everyone. As I watch the fitness floor and classes, there is much time chatting as there is working out. Oftentimes people say to me, I just met my neighbor and I've lived here next to them for 3 years. The Family Center has become a vital part of the Cold Springs community, exists because of the work of Lifestyle Homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Larry Stamps, and then after that, there's 3 more folks who have filled out a public comment card.
Larry Stamps. Apologize. I didn't come prepared to speak today. I've been out of town, just got back, saw the sign. I've got a lot of concerns about this project, and some of them are addressed, a lot of them aren't. And I think before we left about the work being done on other roads in our community where we had the chance to detour around the road work. As they do road work to widen Red Rock Road, I would hope that they wouldn't just widen the existing ups and downs and curves arounds, but that they would improve the road. But I see that as an issue when there's no detour. How do you regrade a road and still maintain safety and access for emergencies or just going to work? Delay after delay after delay. I would think that before it could be considered, you'd have alternative ingress and outgress, that you'd have other roads in and out before you start closing down the existing road. And I can't see how you do it without major disturbances to the existing traffic flow. It just worries me as I get older. I want to have access in and out. As I need to go places, I want to have access in and out. I think the current expansion to multiple lanes on Red Rock Road is based basically on the existing numbers in use. If you add all these additional, even with multiple lanes, it's still going to be, traffic. It's going to be a hassle. School buses and garbage trucks and things that along there. I don't know where, as you go around that lake, you're going to put extra lanes. And from the earlier comments I've heard, that widening Red Rock Road is up to the edge of Silver Knolls, not beyond. I may be wrong, but that's what I understood. So it's one of those things, I would think that you would need to have additional in and out before you start changing Red Rock Road.
Thank you. John Schaefer, and then the last one I have is Sandra Rodriguez.
Good evening. My name is John Schaefer. I'm a 10-year Army combat veteran and a graduate of West Point. I am currently a mortgage banker with Mutual of Omaha. I work with Lifestyle Homes family, and I wanted to provide my testimonial as to who Lifestyle Homes is, and specifically who the listener family is. They are a family of integrity. The listener family builds communities with meaning and cohesion. They're not an individual home builder. And I help our citizens from all walks of life and all stages of life buy a home. New families, retirees, veterans, first-time home buyers, and those looking to buy a better home. As a veteran, I'm especially proud of the area we live in. Reno and Northern Nevada in general truly support and appreciate veterans. The listener family and Lifestyle Homes goes way above and beyond. There are some builders in the area that will not entertain a VA loan. Mr. Listener actually takes less profit on veteran homes and passes that savings on to the veteran families. In some cases, they give me the extra opportunity to prepare a veteran family just so that they can become a home buyer. As you know by now, Lifestyle Homes means 3 generations of the Listener family. They are proud and contributing members of this community, and they're committed to the communities that they build. Lifestyle Homes and the Listener family execute above and beyond regulatory guidelines. But what I wanted to impart on you is their integrity. They say what they mean, and they do what they say. Some are challenging and questioning Lifestyle Homes and the Listener family's intent to deliver this community with integrity. I witness them perform on a daily basis with integrity, with care, and with treating others as they wish to be treated. I recommend that you support Silver Hills. Thank you.
And the last public comment card that I've received is Sandra Rodriguez.
Hi, good afternoon. I just wanted to share a little bit of the experience that I've had with the listeners. I am a homeowner for over 10 years already. I did have a little issue with one of, in the kitchen. Mr. Listener himself went and fixed it. So that says a lot about him, not only because he's a builder. I mean, he shouldn't even be involved with that stuff, but he wants to make sure that me as a homeowner, that I'm happy with what my purchase that I did. My kids, we moved here when my son was 5 years old. He went to the child watch at the Cold Springs Family Center that we have there, and he's now in UNR. With the experience that he sees our house, the community, how safe we are in there, because we also have a patrol watch. So there's always security going around the blocks, checking that everything is okay. With all of that he sees, and he knows that I trust the listeners and the Lifestyle Homes, they're really looking forward to themselves buy their next house. So as a builder, I really trust them. And again, I have family in Spanish Springs. They don't even know who the builder is. They have not met them. Mr. Listener, he gives his phone number to people that he knows. We could reach out to him. As an employer, I also work for him. They closed, when I moved there, it was a YMCA, and they closed it, they just shut it down. Mr. Listener, Peter Listener, he listened to other community. He reopened it. He gave us all of our jobs back. We were taking care of the children that were left with no child care. And up to now, the citizens look up to him, they talk to him, they're able to go and talk to him. So I have a great experience, and I hope that you consider this, because if he does that for Lifestyle Homes in Cold Springs, I'm sure he's going to be doing somewhere else. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
I have none.
Okay. Mr. Smith, if you could read in, I believe you have a couple cards.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 3 written correspondence in terms of public comment. The first is from Alan Ice. This is the long one. First, how many of the people speaking in favor live in the affected area, and how many of them have some kind of financial relationship with the developer? I suggest these speakers are not unbiased or here of their own volition. I am adamantly opposed to allowing the requested zoning changes to allow the Silver Hills development project to move forward. I have lived in Silver Knolls and enjoyed our rural lifestyle for almost 20 years. This project is completely outside of the area character and will irreparably change the character of the entire community. Do not believe any of the promises made by this developer. They have made promises in the past that are simply ignored when they become inconvenient. They previously promised to only build 1 house per acre. Then that promise was ignored. Now they promise to build 1 house per acre on some of their land if they allowed to have this zoning change. Do not believe this. Do not trust this developer. The developer has told me to my face that he does not build 1 house per acre. I quote, "That is not the kind of development I do." The developer promises his engineering will far exceed any requirements for runoff, control, and sewage management. that they will reuse treated wastewater for irrigation. That is great for at most 4 to 5 months of the year. What is the plan for the rest of the year? This developer uses one engineering firm for all its projects, and somehow the engineering results are always favorable. What happens when years from now that engineering is found to be faulty? Who gets stuck picking up the tab? The developer has promised to only build slowly until Red Rock Road and Highway 395 have been improved. The developer's so-called traffic study is so fundamentally flawed that there is not time to go into all of its flaws at this time. Suffice to say, it is inaccurate. What is the developer's plan if RTC and/or the state do not follow their current road and highway improvement schedule and determine that resources are more urgently needed someplace else? Will he stop building? No. If you do vote to proceed with this ill-conceived plan, make it contingent on the developer putting in all required infrastructure improvements and paying for all costs upfront to include, but not limited to, all road construction, improvement and maintenance, all ongoing fire and police expenses, and school construction and staffing costs. Next, after Red Rock Road has been widened, complete the 1 house per acre portion of the project first, and stop all building if Highway 395 widening is postponed. Finally, require the developer to post a bond to cover all expenses involved with cleanup, repair, and reparations when his engineering proves inadequate. If this is truly such a good idea, and this developer is truly the wonderful developer he claims to be, then none of this should be a problem. If not, stop this now while it still can be stopped and before irreparable damage is done. The next card is from Bonnie Cludd. I lived through the massive fire in Silver Knolls. We had no exit for large numbers of people. Please address the road issues. The project is premature. And the next card is from Ryan Whitlock. My name is Ryan Whitlock, and I represent Local 2487. The fire district has a great plan for fire and EMS services to this project. Response times will be reduced, and safety will improve. We urge you to support this project.
I'm going to bring this back to the commission for discussion and possible motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Hartung.
Well, I'm sensitive to everything that's been said. I myself, my own family, bought our home 33 years ago in the Spanish Springs Valley when Sparks did not broach the hill. And it was all that was affordable for us. So I understand this. I understand it all too well. I don't think that this project is outside the limits. I don't believe that, I don't think that what they're asking for is such an intensification that it would be a burden. So therefore, I would make a motion to reverse the RPC's determination of nonconformance and find the proposed master plan amendment conforms with the adopted 2012 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. And I move to reverse the RPC's determination of nonconformance and find the proposed master plan amendment CR 19-009 conforms with the adopted 2012 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan.
Do I have a second for the motion? Second by Commissioner Burtbiegler. Any further discussion on the item? Commissioner Lawson.
Yeah, I think for me, I would have liked some more information. I mean, I got this at 11 o'clock today. If I had this to be able to study to find out if all this is in there, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I haven't been able to read through how many ever documents this is. But this is a hard decision for me, really hard, because I know that those folks, you know, out there, they bought their homes wanting to maintain that lifestyle. But at the same time, I know that we have a need for more affordable housing. I'm not questioning the ability of the listener's product or their integrity or any other aspect. My main concern is on the infrastructure. You know, it just occurs to me, the last speaker, one of the last speakers, you know, said the road would only go to the beginning of Silver Knolls development. Well, that means there's about 20 houses or so that you have to widen the road into their front yards and driveways if you're going to widen the road, or if you're not, I mean, why widen the road in the first place? So there's a lot of questions on all the infrastructure stuff that is bothering me, but at the same time, I think the affordability is a bigger issue in the long term. And so I'm going to have to support it, but I'm going to support it with only the fact that I'm holding your feet to the fire. And if none of this happens, and if it doesn't happen, I'm going to be the first one that's going to be on your doorstep saying, I told you so. And I'm going to put my faith in you, and I'm going to put my faith in Mr. Gordon and Mr. Raley to do the same. That this is, it's tough for me to do, really is, because there is so many unanswered questions.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just to be clear and to put it on the record, the RTP does identify that Red Rock Road will be widened from Moya Boulevard all the way to the Evans Ranch access. It's much further north than the Silver Hills development.
So a couple miles further? Okay. All right. That answered one question. See, I didn't have that information till just now.
Any other discussion, questions, comments? I see none, so I'm going to go with a roll call vote, I think, just to be safe on this. Is that all right?
Okay.
Donald Abbott,
Aye.
Oscar Delgado, Jenny Breckes,
No.
Devin Reese,
Aye.
Bonnie Weber,
Aye.
Charlene Bybee,
Aye.
Ed Lawson, Marsha Burkbigler, Vaughn Hartung,
Aye.
and Jean Herman.
Nay.
Looks like it passes. And thank you all for coming today, and we do appreciate your comments, and I'll definitely did not go on deaf ears. We'll move on to 7A. Pass that over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Smith for the record. In terms of my director's report, I want to point out that our next regularly scheduled meeting of the RPGB is on April 9th, but there has been brought up the consideration of a special meeting in March to hear the appeal of the Daybreak project, which was found in conformance at the last Regional Planning Commission meeting. It's been appealed to this body, and so I was hoping that you folks here would have a discussion about whether or not you want to try to do a special meeting in March, or if you would like to hear that appeal at your regularly scheduled meeting on April 9th. Also, there has been concern expressed by members of this board, a member of this board, about the time frame of the meeting. We have reserved this chambers on March 12th from basically 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. at night. Also on April 9th, we've reserved it from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. So we could have an alternate start time for the meeting if so desired. So if you guys had some feedback for me, please, on if you'd like to hold a special meeting to hear the Daybreak appeal in March. We have a date of March 12th, doesn't have to be that date. Or we can hold that appeal on the regularly scheduled April 9th meeting.
Thank you. And then if I could chime in, I know we all have it on our calendars, hopefully, for April 9th already. I would like for all of us to be there. So I'm willing to do something earlier if you guys want it. I would rather us all be here and not have only a few of us. March 12th is the date.
One suggested date is March 12th.
Yeah. And that was just, I think, a Thursday that was in between.
It's the second Thursday.
I'm good for it. I just...
Not till 9 o'clock.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chair,
Not till 9 o'clock.
Yeah, Commissioner Bradley.
I would just like to comment, if we're looking at a March 12th, I will be returning from Washington DC from National League of Cities. So depending on if my flight gets in when my flight is supposed to, being in the industry, we can't always count on that. So it's a variable for me. I might be able to, but that is a bit of a variable on that date. Thank you.
I need to say for our city council, and I can't speak for everyone, but we are at the League of Cities as well, and I don't know when people are coming back, but I know I won't be here that week.
Okay.
Only because we've already changed our meeting date to a different day.
I think regular meetings already on our calendars too. And then another conversation to be had about timing. I know there's been a conversation of it being a little bit later. I would like for us to have some type of policy. If there are appeals, then we have all of our appeals at 6. So we don't just look at it per project. And I'm just saying, if If we wanted to do it at 6, I think we need to have it fair for everyone. I don't want to either, but why, I think we have to keep in mind each project, what's fair for one. This one was heard right now during a normal hour. Why should we not have that for others? Or we should treat them all the same is what I'm trying to be at. So that's my own opinion.
I guess from my perspective, I would say leave it to the city of Reno, since Daybreak is sitting in the city of Reno, and if they feel that they should have it later, it is really strongly their constituent base, more so than ours, or more so than the counties, but I agree with the position that we did this one during this hour. I think we can do them all during this time. It is afternoon, so.
Or is that something maybe that whatever jurisdiction it's being represented in makes the call? I'm just spitballing.
That's fair.
It's up to you, you're the chair. You can make those decisions.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Just a matter of consideration, I know in my years on the Sparks City Council, when we've had really big issues that we knew there was a lot of public comment and public sentiment, Mayor Martini did schedule more than once. We did our regular council meeting at the regular time, came back for a 6 o'clock public session. Just a thought, I don't know if we wanted to split it or do it all together, but we were trying to accommodate, and that's just what Sparks has done in the past. I'm not saying we have to do that, but it's a matter of maybe consideration to try to allow the public to be there, outside of regular work hours.
Note taken. Is there any other discussion on the hours? Oh, sorry, Norm.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just a little bit of history. Mayor Martini, when he was chairman of this board, has also set big matters at night so the public can get here. So you have the practice here, past practice of doing it here as well.
That works for me. I would say we go with our regular meeting at 5 p.m.
So don't do the 2 o'clock, do it 5.
I think so. Maybe we can do the agenda at 5 and then start the hearing at 6. We have other items, because you were going to talk about that budget issue.
Absolutely, yes.
So do we need to get a motion for the April 9th at 5 p.m.? No? Okay.
I don't think so, no.
Okay. No taken. Then we will move on to legal counsel's report.
Mr. Chair, I have nothing further.
Awesome, thank you. And then Board of Trustees? We'll move on to item 8, requests for future agenda items. I'm assuming we have one from Ms. Breckus for.
Yeah, he's got it.
Yep,
Yeah.
just to put that officially
Yeah.
there. 9, public comment.
I have none.
And then 10, written correspondence.
We have none.
And 11, adjournment. Thank you all.
Bye.